All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the War Games podcast number 20. So tonight I have two very special guests with me, a couple of good friends from over at Race Department. Firstly, joining me yet again, the man himself, Mr. Bobby Pennington, and as well as a fellow staff member, Mr. Paul Jeffrey. So thank you, gentlemen, for joining me tonight. Good evening.
Good evening. It's my pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for being able to make it on here today. Now, any of you guys watching know we're a little bit early tonight for the podcast, or this afternoon, if you will. Normally we're a couple hours later than this, but we pushed the podcast ahead a couple hours to accommodate Mr. Jeffrey, as in case you could not tell, he is indeed from across the pond, if you will. So before we get into some of the stuff I want to talk about tonight, obviously we're going to be talking about a lot of racing, which is why you guys are currently watching me drive the Porsche 911 RSR 2017 around Daytona, which is another thing we're going to be talking about. First, let's get to know Paul a little bit here. As I said, Bobby has already been on the podcast before. I will not force him to go through his background again. So, Mr. Jeffrey, tell the guys a little bit about you. Where are you from? What is it you do? And so on.
Hey, man. Well, firstly, this is weird. It's normally me asking the questions.
Yeah, I know.
I don't quite know what to make of this side of it. But yeah, thanks for having me. My name's Paul Jeffrey. I'm from the UK, so nobody will be able to understand what I'm saying. From north of UK as well, which makes it doubly hard, from a place called Sheffield. And yeah, just really a bit of a sim racing motorsports fan, and got myself wrapped up in race department many moons ago, and haven't been able to escape ever since.
Yeah, and the first thing I actually want to talk about isn't actually racing per se, which may surprise some of you guys, because what I know Paul more for than anything else, and what any of you guys would know him for heading over to department would be the stories that Paul writes, the news stories. If any of you guys head over to racedepartment.com, on the home page, you'll see a bunch of news stories, page after page after page after page of news stories following all kinds of different sim racing, real world motorsports, hardware, just everything involved around cars, really, and racing. And Paul writes the vast majority of those. So really the first thing I want to talk about is what got you into writing, Paul. Is it something that you've always been interested in as far as doing news stories in general, or just about racing, or is it something that just kind of came along as you got more involved in race department?
Chance and misfortune.
So the thing that gets us into pretty much everything.
Yeah, pretty much. To be honest, it's a weird one. I've always loved motorsport in every way, shape, and form. I sort of remember my first Grand Prix from '91. And then the first one I attended was '96 at Silverstone, the worst viewing place in the whole world. And I've always loved it. I've never been interested in PCs, gaming, computers, or anything like that. And then once upon a time, sort of killing a little bit of time at my in-laws' house when we'd been for a visit, I was flicking around the internet and I found R-Factor 1, as it was at the time. No idea what it were. The idea of sim racing meant nothing to me. And I kind of started looking at it and thinking, oh, this is cool. I forget what were on the screen at the time. It was a touring car of some variety. Thought, oh, that's pretty interesting. And the more I looked into it, it became this big, massive world. Like, oh my God, R-Factor 1 at the time, their marketing spiel was if there's a racing series in the world, it's in R-Factor. And the more I looked, I found obscure things that I've read in Autosport magazine and thought, oh my God, this is amazing. Got very, very excited, went out and got myself a PC, bought a GTR2 and R-Factor. Thought, oh, this is incredible. Got a steering wheel, plugged it up to my desk like you do with sort of wood chocks holding pedals in place, and all that good stuff, and a real makeshift bodge job thing. And lo and behold, came across race department for their like substantial archive of mods and whatnot. Kind of because I'm new to the world of PC racing, I'd never done online or anything. Scared a little bit getting involved, so just sort of I was an interested observer for years, really, just sort of watching what were happening in the forums, downloading mods and driving on my own. And then I kind of a few years back took the plunge to do a bit of online racing, and my gateway drug was Race Room Racing Experience, and loved the sort of organized element, the banter on TeamSpeak, the forum side of things, and just like awesome racing, really. Replicated basically everything that you do in real life, but the comfort, pleasure, and safety at home. And at the time, the chap who were running it, he left for personal reasons, and we were kind of without someone to run the club. And being a noisy sort of fella that I am, and didn't want to see it end, I kind of made a lot of noise, tried to encourage a few people to band together, and they offered me at race department a role managing the club, which I did for a year or so and really enjoyed it. And then race room related, I think it was Spa maybe, came out for the first time, and there were no news. We didn't do much news at the time. It was kind of hit and miss. So I knocked together a quick article saying, hey, do you want to put that on front page just to draw attention to it? Kind of found, well, I enjoyed that. That was quite good fun, and nobody else seems to have picked it up after I'd done it. So did another one and another, and I'm the kind of guy that if you're going to do something, you do it 100% or don't bother.
Right.
So before I knew it, I'm knocking out 10 articles a day, and they said, do you want to do this properly? Well, bugger it. So somebody else came and did Race Room Club, and I started writing and just kind of found it as an awesome way to give back to a community that I've taken so much from, so much pleasure I get from it. I can't mod, I can't make tracks, I'm not a technical guy, but I can half-arsed throw some slightly poor grammar onto a page and away we go. So yeah, that's my little thing that I try and do.
That's the thing that honestly surprises me when you say you just kind of fell into it. Is you say that it's haphazard and so on, but honestly the articles are just so well written, and
Oh, thanks,
you can
dude.
tell that you really genuinely care. You really put time into it to do your research and, you know, make sure that every word you're writing down in there is 100% true. And I mean, the thing that I guess I wonder about is, I mean, do you have I guess what you would consider formal education as far not just necessarily writing, but like writing news articles like that sense? Did you go to any type of
No.
journalism classes or anything?
Absolutely nothing. English were the only subject I half enjoyed at school. Left school at 16 to the big wide world of work. So no formal qualifications at all. Just a passion. I can't tell you. This sounds really soppy. So apologies everybody who's listening. All you big heavy duty war type dudes. Uh, hey, the British here comes. I adore sim racing. The pleasure I have got out of sim racing is just I can't quantify it in words. It's almost quite emotional.
Oh,
Sim
absolutely.
racing is absolutely everything to me, as outside of family, obviously. Um, and a lot of people don't know what it is. They think it's just a computer game where there's nothing wrong with sitting in front of an
Right.
Xbox with a controller. Don't get me wrong, but I want to do a little bit of something to spread the word. And if one person, in all the years I've done it, if one person reads what I put, gets a little bit inspired, joins up in the world of online racing, and gets
Oh,
a
that's
quarter
great.
of the fun that I've got, job done. I've achieved what
Yeah,
I needed to achieve.
you can feel, yeah, exactly. You've helped, I guess, somewhat better someone's life if they're able to get the same feeling out of it that we do because of
Exactly.
words that you put on a page somewhere. And I can definitely understand that. I mean, that's one of the reasons I do this podcast is to, you know, give people kind of an inside look as to what I do and why I enjoy it. And that's where, you know, when I've said this before, when I play ArmA with the unit, for me anymore, that's me going to work, and that's not a bad thing. I'm not saying that as in, you know, me doing the operations and stuff. It feels like work, and I don't have fun with it. I do have fun with it. I'm incredibly lucky in the sense to say that me going to work means I get to play a video game, you know. But
Awesome.
yeah, exactly. But it is work for me. That's where I go to be serious and to do my job. Sim racing is what I do for fun. That is, you know, that's me getting to kind of kick back, hang out with the boys, bullshit, have fun. And yes, I do, you know, there are still times where I take it seriously and, you know, you guys don't necessarily know how much work that goes into some of the races. Myself and Bobby will spend hours a week practicing for a single race. Um, but that's my fun. That's where I get to have a really good time. Uh, and before I go on my rant too much longer, I gotta, you know, pay the bills, if you will, and very quickly say thank you very much to Jaws for that 5-month resub, brother. I can't believe it's already been that long. Thank you for the continued support to the channel. And Liquid, I can't tell you how much that support means to helping out mom and everything that's going on right now. So very, very much thank you, Liquid, for the support to not me, but to my family. I can't thank you enough, brother. So to, I guess, continue on from where we left off there, as I said, if you go to racedepartment.com and check out the homepage, you're going to see all these news stories that Paul has written. And also, as I said, you can tell, or at least I can tell by reading those stories, that Paul really puts his all into it, as far as, you know, really doing the research and so on. And I know we've talked about this a little bit before, just me and you kind of having bullshit sessions, but, you know, on average, Paul, how much time do you think you put in on, say, a weekly basis as far as writing articles for Race Department, doing the research for them, the prep work for them, and then actually writing them and putting them up? How much time would you think you put into a week worth of news at Race Department?
Oh, dude, that is maths I cannot do. I'll break it down daily. Unfortunately, I work full time in the real world, which is a shame. But have to do it to the
Shame.
bills. I know, tell me
Shame.
about it. So, on average, we'll get home, give or take, around sort of like 6:15 or so. The wife, I've got a little boy and a wife, so I'll have half an hour playing with Ben until 7, and then usually it's 7 till around 1 a.m. I'll be on RD, either writing or on email, not Twitter, what's the word I'm looking for? Skype, there we go, talking to various people in industry or just doing research and whatnot. So yeah, it is sort of 4 or 5 hours a night. Basically, it's every spare second of my free time.
Right.
I try and carve a few hours out of the weekend to go do family stuff, and the wife is incredibly supportive because basically I'm a shit husband and father. I spend way too much time doing this, but she knows that it's my passion, and I don't want to sound sort of like stupid about it, but we have like upwards of 4,500,000 unique visitors a month coming to site. So it's an awesome responsibility that trust has been placed in me to do it. So
yeah, that's
a
your
big
name,
commitment.
your words being put out there and seen by potentially hundreds of thousands of people.
That's the thing. It's just folks are relying on me to do the duty that I have to do at RD, and also people coming there to enjoy reading or talking and using it as a platform to chat about the thing that we all love, sim racing. So there is what do I call it? There is a worrying, not a worrying, but a pressure there to make sure that
Yeah.
I do deliver what we need to deliver. Because you know yourself, news is news when it's news. Tomorrow it's not news. Tomorrow it's something that happened in the past. So it's no use to me
and nobody
having a
gives
day off.
nobody gives a shit about what happened a week ago. They want to know what's happening right now or
Nobody
tomorrow.
wants to watch an onboard lap of a track that came out last week. They don't care.
Yeah.
They want to watch it before it comes out, like Road America for Race Room
Exactly.
we did the other day.
And that's Glover just mentioned in chat that he just watched your review of Road America and said very nice work on it, which I absolutely agree.
Oh, thanks, dude.
As I was telling you earlier, Road America is one of my favorite circuits in the world. And Race Room definitely did an outstanding job with it. I haven't had a chance to actually drive on it yet because it was just released today, correct? To the public?
Yes. Earlier this afternoon it came out. I think it's £4.60 something UK. So in dollars, basically how much our pound is worth at the moment is probably about 3 cents even.
Yeah. And we had a question from Yogi, one of the guys in my unit, who I know is also interested in this and hopefully soon going to be joining us. He asks, Paul, what is your advice for someone that really wants to get into sim racing? How do you suggest they get their foot in the door with sim racing?
Biggest and best advice I can give that's contrary to most things that you'll read. Don't go crazy on buying expensive hardware. Don't feel that you need to drop thousands of dollars on a rig, on a top-of-the-line steering wheel and pedals. Get some cheap entry-level stuff. Look in the Steam sales for things like Assetto Corsa, which is on screen at the moment, R Factor 2, Race Room, Automobilista, Project Cars 2 even, if you feel like hurting your soul a little bit. Get them, have some fun. Come join somewhere like Race Department or some of the other communities that are around. Ask questions. The sim racing community, I mean, it can get a little bit feisty, a little bit toxic when you say my sim is bigger than yours and all that good stuff. But for the most part, 99.9% of people love to help others. Go in there, throw your questions down, enjoy it, and as you get into it and you start feeling the fun, and you start sort of getting confidence in yourself that you can get a level where you're enjoying yourself and you're not sort of nervous and trepidation going out on track, come do some rookie event online races that obviously Bobby and yourself run in Assetto Corsa. Really low pressure, fun environment. It's all about learning, and just take it step by step. Don't drop loads of money, and then as you get more into it, you'll find yourself getting sucked into wanting.
Then you
bigger
can
and
drop
better
loads of
things.
money.
Yeah, man. Yeah, but get yourself in for it. It's like a drug. Have a free sample first.
Yeah.
Find you get hooked, and then keep going back for more later.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I can't agree with that more. Like you said, don't go out and first thing drive or buy a $1,500 direct drive wheel and a full motion cockpit, drop like $5,000 starting out. When I started sim racing, now admittedly, I started sim racing very late compared to most people. I just started sim racing in like April of last year. And I bought a very simple Thrustmaster TMX wheel. It was like $119 or something. And on the recommendation of the guy who actually got me into sim racing, which was Soto, he recommended that I get a separate set of pedals because the pedals that come with the TMX are not very good quality. So I never even used the pedals that came with it. I immediately bought a set of Thrustmaster T3 PA Pro pedals, which were another like $200. So $400 essentially I got into sim racing. And I used that wheel and pedal all the way up until maybe a month or two ago, or yeah, just under a month ago, when I got my new wheel and pedals for Christmas. And I ran like that for a long time and had an absolute ton of fun. And like Paul said, once you get in the door and start racing for a couple months, maybe a year or so, that's when you'll find that you'll start looking to upgrade. And the three of us were talking about this before we actually went live. And that was, as a lot of you guys know, I come from the world of hot rodding and drag racing and stuff like that. And in that world especially, because you're not looking for, necessarily how to make your car corner faster or anything like that, because we don't go through corners, we just go in a straight line. You're looking for every single little ounce of speed that you can get in a straight line, because you only have 1,320 feet to get that job done. That's it. You don't have an entire lap. You don't have 5 kilometers, 6 kilometers, whatever. You have 1,320 feet to win or lose that race. So you need to find every ounce of speed you can get out of that vehicle in that just over 1,000 foot. So you're constantly upgrading. You're always on the lookout for a bigger carburetor, bigger jets, bigger cam, better lifters, so on and so forth. You're constantly upgrading. And I realized this the other night. I was sitting here looking at Newegg and Amazon and Fanatec and all the different sites and stuff, thinking, what's going to be my next upgrade for my rig? What's the next thing I'm going to do to improve my racing? And not just improve my speed, but improve my overall racing. Maybe it's something to do with immersion. Maybe it's something to do with the comfort, so on. But what do I want to upgrade next? And I was like, man, I used to do the same thing back when I was actually racing. I'd sit there for hours on end, pouring through the Jegs catalog, through the Summit catalog, saying, oh man, well, if I can get, $250 together, I can buy this nice fucking 4-barrel carb that's got better flow than the one I currently have. Or if I can get this $200 together, I can get this cam that's got better lift than the one I already have. I did the same thing 10 years ago when I was actually racing. And, so I posed the question to you guys, to Paul and Bobby. Do you guys find yourself doing that same thing after a while of, having a new piece of equipment? You get used to it, get comfortable with it, get good with it. Do you then find yourself looking, saying, okay, what's the next thing I can upgrade? What's the next piece I can go out and get and make me faster, or make me more comfortable, or help my immersion?
Well, I'm lucky in the fact that I've already got the wheel and I've already got the pedals, so I'm pretty happy. I've got my stuff is good enough that I don't think it's going to really make any difference in my abilities. Uh, I probably would like to have a new wheel simply because the G27 tends to be loud. Uh, Pedals are okay. If I could upgrade them, I would, but really, you just don't have to do it. But the one thing that I'll touch on,
I
and
know what's
Jeremy, we
coming.
touched on it last time, is the VR experience.
Oh, yes.
It it makes a difference in your ability to drive the car on the limit. So I can drive it on the limit, and let's just say I have a lap time of 145 on a screen, but if I get in with the VR, same setup, same track, same car, everything, now all of a sudden I'm doing 144, or I might be doing a 143.7. And anytime you can gain a second doing anything in racing, you're really making great strides. So, but that's for down the road. And going back to what Paul was talking about, getting into it, guys, don't spend the money. Jeremy and Paul are both right. Don't spend the money. Get in as cheap as you can. The one thing I'll recommend is don't do public lobby racing. It will turn you off in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Get somewhere organized. I was lucky that I joined race department first, started racing there, and then I thought, okay, I'm going to go out to the public lobbies because I'm not getting enough of my fix. And I went out there, and it was a smash fest.
Yeah, it's.
I said, screw this. This, it turns you off. So those are my views on it.
Yeah, and to relate it, I mean, you guys listening, most of you know the fucking horror stories of the ArmA public servers. It's basically the equivalent. RD is the 506th, and public lobbies for racing are public servers for ArmA. There's your correlation. It's the same thing, pretty much. And so...
Sadly, that's true across the board as well. That's not really kind of like isolated instances. That is what you get in a public server. Unfortunately, every now and again, you'll get a good race. But
it can... Generally, towards the front of the pack can be some very, very good racing at the front of the pack.
Until the guy at the back decides that he doesn't want to break
it. Yeah, exactly. the back of the pack and the middle of the pack, you're dead. And very quickly to answer the question from Glover, whether we are going to see me and Bobby tear up Road America within Race Room, maybe. I was just telling Paul before we went live that, I need to pick that up because I do love Race Room. You guys don't ever see me race it just because I don't take part in the Race Room club races that we have at Race Department just because I don't have the time. I would fucking love to because I love Race Department. I just don't have the time to. But you guys may see me hop on there and check it out because, again, it is my favorite circuit. But back to the question at hand, Paul, how about yourself? Do you find yourself always kind of looking towards the horizon saying, what's the next thing I can do?
Well, unfortunately, I'm a hardware whore. I just can't resist it. I honestly can't. It's one of those things where, sort of to touch on what Bobby mentioned earlier, I'm a firm believer, and again, this sometimes flies contrary to what the general opinion is. I don't think hardware makes you faster, particularly. It can improve your consistency. A good set of pedals on a load cell, so you're using muscle memory, absolutely can improve consistency. A really good steering wheel gives you better force feedback, so you can feel what the car's doing underneath you a little bit better as well. But racing's racing. Same in real world racing. In a £500 banger or a Formula One car, going too wide,
they can both be incredibly fun.
Absolutely. So cheap kit will still get you in, will still let you feel the car, so you've got an element of control, and you can still race with people. Now, as you get into it more, and you start thinking, yes, this is something I can invest time and or money into, and something like me, where I mean, I don't race as much as I used to, because I've just not got time, but before I started doing my RD duties, I'd be on every night for an hour or two. The level of pleasure I get from it then means I want to get a little bit or a better piece of equipment. Essentially for me, because I'm now married, I've got life commitments to the child and everything, the real racing dream has evaporated after a very short time in that world. So I want to replicate, well, I want to simulate, funnily enough, sim racing, the real thing. And to do that, it's all about immersion for me. I don't want to be the fastest, which is a bizarre thing to say for someone who races, but the idea of putting it on pole and stroking away from field does not interest me. I want to be 14th with 3 guys in front of me that are on the same pace and 3 guys behind that are on the same pace and fight and trade paint. I want an immersive experience, so better equipment does get you a better experience. I mean, Bobby mentioned it, and yourself, Jeremy, sort of jumped in there as well. VR. I dropped for a VR last year. Best thing I've ever done, without any shadow of doubt.
I agree 100%.
That puts you in. I mean, I saw a graphic once because I watched a few videos on VR, and what you see on the screen, you see the flat image, you see the guy can move his head about and he can look forward and backwards, and you think, whoa, that's cool. But I saw a graphic that summed it up for me perfectly, and nobody will understand until they put one on the head. There's a guy to represent playing on a single screen or 3 screens, whatever. There's a guy looking at a tree in front of him. To simulate putting on head tracking or 3D glasses, it's a guy looking at multiple trees, and some are further in front, some are further behind. VR, it's a guy stood in a fucking forest. Everywhere you look, there's trees all around you. You're in the car. You can see. I mean, I put it on my little boy's head the other day. He's only 4, and he's going, whoa, whoa, thinking he's going to fall over because there's a drop below him, reaching for stuff. You're in the bloody car. You can see Imola, turn 1, Imola, Tamburello chicane. They've got those little mini sausage curbs on the apex, just past the apex.
Yeah, the cut things.
Yep. Difficult to hit that on a screen because you can't see the front of your vehicle. In VR, they're tangible, real items that are at the side of the circuit. I can place my wheel a millimetre next to it every single time because it's there. I'm not looking at a representation on a flat screen. I'm not looking at a photograph of something. I'm not looking at a photograph of my wife. I'm stood in front of her. She's there. She's a fully formed thing in front of me. And that's what VR is to me. Oh, God, I am a fanboy. Hands up, 100% I am a VR fanboy.
Oh, absolutely. I've told the guys multiple times, I can never speak highly enough of it, provided you have something to use it for. Do not go out and buy a VR headset for the games that are currently out for it, like the games that are made specifically for VR. Yeah, they're cool, but they're kind of cheesy. They're campy. They're made for the VR. There's not a lot of, I guess, thought
cool to
put
show
into
your
them.
friends after a beer.
Yeah,
hey,
exactly.
Look at this. Woo.
Yeah,
sim racing's perfect for VR.
Yeah, if you're big into sim racing or flight sims, absolutely. Yes. VR will make it a completely different game for you.
Game changer.
Massive game changer. Beyond anything that we can say here tonight, we can talk for 5 hours solid about VR and we're not doing 1% justice. It's wow. It really is one of those things that you get on, you put it on your head. The first lap I did were Assetto Corsa again, funnily enough, in a KTM Expo at Spa.
Oh, that's good. Any open top car is so fun.
I just stopped on the Camel Straight, got out of the car and went, walked on going, dude, Faye, shout my wife, come here and look at this. She does not care. Wow, it's just the kind of thing that you want to ring people up that you don't know. And so I've got VR. Ha, good for me.
And we had a fucking outstanding question from Yogi in chat, saying, for a rookie, is there a car track combination that any of you would recommend to grasp the basics? What would you guys say to that?
Very good question.
It depends how you're geared up. Some people like old cars, some people like... For me, even now, I can't drive a Grand Prix car. It's not in my nature to have point and square masses of downforce. I don't like it. I can't engage with it. It does not interest me. But put me in a touring car, old or new, happy as a pig in muck. So, depends what your natural inclination.
I would recommend you want to stay away from street cars on circuits simply because the tires, they're too sketchy. You want to drive something that has low power, has slicks on it, not semi-slicks, but slicks. If you find a combination like that, something that is low on power so you don't have to worry about throttle control as much in the beginning, and it's a little bit slower so it's easier to set up for corners and braking points, a car like that will work. You don't want a very hilly circuit where you have some kind of blind apexes, because it takes a lot of timing and feel to get those down. You want the circuit to be laying there right out in front of you, and a simple circuit would be like, say, Silverstone National.
Or Brands Hatch Indy as well. That's a good one with a nice mix of chord, hairpins, fast turns.
Yeah, the only thing about Brands Hatch Indy is Paddock Hill Bend is so tricky.
The Indy course isn't a goddamn circuit. It's a go-kart track that happens to be attached to a racetrack. I'm not a
yeah,
fan of the Indy circuit.
yeah, but you know, something like that. You want a circuit that's relatively flat, where corners are easy to see coming up. There's a couple of corners at Silverstone that they're really tough to get them just right, because when you get them right, you can keep your foot flat through there, and it takes you a long time to get that down. But that's what I would recommend.
I'd
I
have to agree with that, actually.
I personally, and this may sound crazy to some, uh, and yes, Vertigo, you can get out of your car in VR in a setup. Basically, you get up out of your seat and step to the left, and you're outside the driver's door. You can look around at your car. Um, Again, this is gonna come across as kind of crazy. As far as, and I'm gonna go with Assetto Corsa because that's the sim I race the most, and to me, I recommend it for entry. Like if you want to get into a sim that is detailed enough that you can learn about car setups and the geometry and weight transfer of cars and stuff, Assetto Corsa has it. It's simple enough. You know, it has tool tips when you go over top of things in the setup to tell you what it's going to do to the car. So I always recommend Assetto Corsa as far as a sim to get into, get your foot in the door. The car I would recommend learning with is the BMW M235i. The reason I say that is it's powerful enough that you can get into situations of oversteer where you need to correct it. It's not so powerful where you have to do 2 billion mile an hour around a corner to keep the car stuck to the track. But it's slow enough that you're not going to get in too much trouble with it. The circuit I recommend, and this may be because I'm a fanboy of it or not, but the circuit I recommend is always Spa. Now, the reason I recommend Spa, and the reason some people may think it's crazy, because Spa is a very technical track. It is hard to master. There's a reason it's the driver's circuit. You really have to be a driver to get the most out of that circuit. The reason I recommend it is because Spa is the one track that I know mixes everything. You have long straights in the first and final sector. And then you have the second sector consisting of Les Combes, Bruxelles, Pouin, so on, where you have all the different mixes of the types of corners. And then right at the end of the final sector, you have the chicane to give you a really good hard braking point with tight entry and exit.
Yep.
And it just, all around, it is, to me, the perfect circuit and a great place to learn. As I said, it's very, very difficult to master. But if you can learn Spa and get fast around Spa, you can be fast anywhere else.
I would agree with that sentiment.
Same. Yep, same here.
I won't say
absolutely.
it's the easiest to learn, but I will say that if you have the balls to do it, it will teach you everything you need to know about racing. Because
Yep.
it's got off camber, it's got like Jeremy was talking about, it's got the very, very tricky slow speed chicane, which you wouldn't think a chicane is tricky, but when you enter Spa, when you enter the bus stop chicane at the beginning, the right-hander there, it's a little bit off camber, and if you enter with too much speed, too stiff of a car, or just a little bit too much throttle, you're going to loop it right there. You know, and typically slow corners like that don't present problems, but it has the high-speed sweepers that you get just right. It's got the good middle speed. Pouin is a kind of downhill double apex to the left. A little bit off camber there, so I mean it's very tricky, but man, when you get it right, it's glorious.
Oh, it feels so good.
Yeah. And interestingly with Spa as well, a lot of the corners have a long high-speed section after them, so it really trains your concentration to make sure that you're getting off the corner. That's the best tip for anybody. Don't worry when you're starting out about corner entry. Don't worry too much about mid-corner as long as you're near enough the apex. Get corner exit spot on, and then start bringing your braking zone shorter and shorter and shorter, and worry about the corner entry. You can save a tenth of a second braking last of the late breakers into a corner and lose half a second coming out of it. So get corner exit right first and foremost. Everything else will come after that. Absolutely. Nothing more frustrating than coming off a corner, you think you've got
and
it,
just
bumps
getting
to the wall,
driven by like you're tied to a stump.
Yeah, awful feeling.
Yeah,
Dreadful.
and that's actually something that, me and Bobby went over in the new driver academy that we're doing at race department, is especially at Spa, because like you said, most of the corners have a short to medium length straight immediately after them. You can sacrifice entry speed. You can brake a little bit earlier so you can set up perfectly going into that corner so that you get a really, really good corner exit. And like Paul said, entry speed is not where you gain time. Being the last of the late breakers, yeah, great, you look cool. It doesn't mean shit when you're losing half a second coming out of the corner. Corner exit is where all of the time is made up. That's where that guy is making up that tenth of a second on every corner exit. And on a course like Spa that has 20 corners, that's 2 seconds he's making up on you. That's a second and a half he's making up on you. A second, whatever. That corner exit is where he's making that time up. So, again, that's why, I say Spa is the circuit to really learn everything when it comes to driving a car. Brands is another favorite of mine. I personally don't recommend it for learning because, like Bobby said, Paddock Hill Bend is a very, very difficult corner. And in VR, it feels like you're basically driving off the edge of a cliff.
It's beautiful.
Yes.
Yeah, I love it.
Beautiful.
I mean, to me, Brands is one of those endearing circuits that I don't care what car it is, with exception of modern F1 cars and stuff like prototypes that's just too fast to go around Brands. But Brands is a great mix of kind of low to mid speed when you talk about druids and different
going down into
Surtees, Graham Hill,
Surtees,
and then you've got the high speed stuff like Hawthorns and Dingledale, or whatever the fuck it is they call it now. I'll always call it Dingledale.
It will always be Dingledale.
Yeah, and also coming into Clearways. Clearways to me is one of my favorite corners on that circuit, and the reason being is the camber of it. The camber on Clearways just it throws you off so much, and you really have to know that circuit to be able to take that corner perfectly. And so Brands is one of those, if you can learn how to be fast around Brands, you can be fast around a lot of places, but it's definitely not somewhere I recommend starting out with, because Brands is so unique with some of its corners that some of those corner techniques at Brands don't really translate to anywhere else, with exception to probably Laguna, which we just got in Assetto Corsa. And I love Laguna. It's another one. It is our version of Brands Hatch. It's the US version of Brands. Like, we looked at Paddock and said, yeah, that's a pretty gnarly hill. We can make it bigger. So
the American mentality.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like,
bigger and better.
That's cute. Paddock Hill drops 2 stories. Corkscrew drops 3.
Yeah, exactly.
And so if you can get good around those 2 very technical circuits, yeah, you can be good in a lot of places. But I still say Spa is the best. And again, the BMW 235i, I mean, there's a reason they use that car for driving schools, because it is just, in my opinion, the perfect learning car. The balance of it, being front engine, rear wheel drive, it's a driver's car. You decide what that car is going to do with not only the steering wheel, but also with the loud pedal. Like I said, it's got just enough power to get you in a little bit of trouble, but not so much power that you're going to spin out and end up coming through a corner backwards and on fire.
Yeah, it's the perfect car. We've had a lot of good races in that car, a lot of close battles.
And
can I just add though for a second to sort of go back to the original question for a moment. Stupid.
Oh,
go
now
online
Paul's and stuff
race
got
against people.
What was that, Paul?
Go online and race with people in an organised environment that's designed for rookies. That's the best way. I've done tons, and as I mentioned at the beginning, tons and tons of offline practice, thousands and thousands of laps. Came into an online race, 3 seconds off of the pace at the back of the grid.
Yeah.
Did 5 or 6 online races, mid-pack, no problem, because the competition kicks in. There is nothing sweeter than chasing somebody down, and you look for what they're doing, you learn from what they're doing, ask some questions, get some advice, boom, 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 boom. before, and you're having a hell
Well,
of a lot of fun.
there's that, and there's also, I mean, as all of us know, most corners have multiple lines through them. There's not just the one individual magic line that's always the fastest through a corner. Almost every corner has multiple ways you can go as far as corner entry, where your inside clipping point's going to be, where your outside clipping point's going to be, stuff like that. Each corner can have multiple lines through it. When you race offline and you're racing AI, they don't take those alternative lines.
Exactly.
They take that predetermined line every single time without variation. As to where that alternative line, that later apex, may be better for your driving style. But you don't even know that late apex even exists by racing against the AI. As to where you hop into, you know, an RD club race and you see this other guy in the MX-5 Cup car turn in, you know, 10, 15 meters later than where you are, and he comes squirting out of that corner with so goddamn much exit speed coming out of that corner that he just drives away from you. Then you go, oh shit, I can take that corner completely differently.
A perfect example of that sort of scenario is the, I don't know the corner name, the downhill chicane at the Turkey track, former Turkish Grand Prix venue. That one, offline, doing the perfect line, catching the apex at the left-hand part at the beginning, and then swinging it round right for the second part of the chicane, and then going up the hill and onto the triple apex job.
Yeah.
As soon as I took it online, you ignore completely the first part of that chicane, because it's all about the exit on the second part, and I'm wondering why I'm dropping 3-4 tenths of a second a lap. And it's purely because you don't know that you're doing, if you're following the technically correct way to do things, you will hit both apexes, you will treat them two separate corners and come out and away you go. You completely and utterly sacrifice that first turn, go nowhere near the apex, so you can be as far to the right as you possibly can to swing back left for the second part of it and power up the hill. That's stuff that only learns up, you could only learn, unless you're particularly talented anyway, you can only learn by seeing other people do it and saying, hey, whoa, 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 whoa. What's this? Why are you doing that? There's the advantage. Follow that person and then make it your own.
Yeah.
I had done 23 years of offline hot lapping and racing against the AI. Very comfortable, was competent. When I joined race department, I thought I would still be competent. I knew I wouldn't be quick, but I thought, okay, I'll be able to do it. And I'll never forget. I got on the grid that first time, my hands are sweating.
Yeah.
My heart is beating out of my chest. And I'm like, what is wrong with you? And what it is, you start getting jacked up. You start getting the butterflies because you're in real competition with real people that you're talking to. And it raises it to a whole new level. Now, after a couple of weeks of it, all of that settled down except the anticipation of wanting to do it again. So at first you're going to be nervous. We all are, but you get used to it. And hopefully after your first race, you're like, you know, I survived. I didn't take anybody out. I had a blast. I need to improve, but man, it's so much fun. I'm doing this.
Yeah.
Exactly like real racing, isn't it? You get on there and you want to be better
Absolutely.
and better and better and better to have more fun, not to win, not to dominate, just to have more fun and fight. ArmA, perfect example, because obviously a lot of you guys watching and listening today have got the ArmA experience. Go online against AI, sorry, not online, offline against AI. You can have a nice time. You go into a battle with 40 other guys and you're having a proper coordinated, organised battle fight, taking areas. That is so much more fun, so much more of a learning experience. You pick up so much more from doing that. Online sim racing, exactly the same thing. There's a place for offline hot lapping. There's a place for racing against the AI, absolutely. But for me, there is no greater fun than having done 20 laps nose to tail with somebody where I'm at my absolute limit, and so is the other guy, and you're looking and you're sizing them up over 3 laps. Where are they strong? Where are they weak? What can I do to put a pass on? And then go too wide for 4 corners and have still conceded the place. Man,
yeah.
man.
That's actually the race the guys are watching right now at Daytona. Myself and Florian went nose to tail. There was less than a half a second gap between the two of us for 45 minutes straight.
Sweet.
He just rode right on my bumper because he couldn't get by me on the straights. He had too much wing, and I would just drive right by him. But if he stayed behind me, I would pull him along in the toe, and he could stay right behind me. But he couldn't get enough to get around me in the midfield and didn't have the speed to get around me on the banks. So he just sat there and let me tow him around the circuit. And I was happy to, because towing somebody like that makes both of you faster. So yeah, that was one of the best races I've had. And we weren't necessarily directly battling. At no point in time did I feel like he was going for a move, or was I worried about him diving along the inside. I knew he was just sitting back there, saving fuel, biding his time. And it was a great time. Like I said, to race for 45 minutes with less than a half a second gap the entire time. Oh God, that was good. So much fun.
And that's why we do what we do. That's exactly why you spend 3 hours, 4 hours practicing 1,000 kilometers or whatever practicing to have that exact experience. Is words can't describe. If you like motor racing, and you probably do if you're getting into sim racing, or if you're into sim racing, that's the peak of what you're looking for, is to know you've come off, you've given it everything you've got, you've had a damn fine race, and 3 or 4 guys have been a little pack or whatever, and you've all had a good, fair, hard, clean race. And the beauty about doing it in an organised environment, I mean, this is not a plug for race department, even though it sounds like it, but if you're doing it in an organised environment, you're talking to these guys on TeamSpeak like we are now. If you drop a bollock and make a mistake, you say sorry, you wait for them, you let them take the position. It's all good because it's genuine, the heat of the moment racing incidents, not people hooning around and making a fool of themselves and having no consideration to others.
Yeah, and we had Glover mentioned that Bathurst was similar to Spa in the sense that it has a mixture of everything. And I would agree, Bathurst does have a mixture of everything, but I've always said that Bathurst is basically Spa on anabolic steroids, which it is to me, because, I mean, think about it. You have to be hanging upside down and have too much blood rushing to your head to design a place with that much speed and to have a wall right next to the curb. There is no runoff there. The runoff there is quite literally you smashing your car into such a small piece that everybody just drives by you. But Bathurst is coming up this weekend. The race is this weekend. I know I myself am going to be catching at least some of it. I should be able to watch the start of it before the training this weekend. Are you guys going to be watching any of it? The Bathurst race this weekend?
Oh yeah, every year I watch some of it. Have to. It's one of those iconic worldwide motorsport events. I think all of us that like motorsports, you tune into that. You have to. You don't want to miss.
It's like the 500, the Daytona 500. I mean, everybody knows about it, or the Indy 500. Everybody knows about it. Everybody at least watches a little bit of it, even if you're only slightly, involved in motorsports or give a shit about it. You know about it, and you want to watch at least a little bit of it.
Monaco GP, same way.
Mm-hmm.
I've got to hang my head in shame a little bit now. I had totally missed it's Bathurst this weekend. So thank you,
how dare ye! The newsman is behind the news.
How too much doing things like this?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm research today.
We're talking about the insanity of the circuit. And I made a joke in one of our race posts. I said, we have the green hell in Germany, the Nordschleife. I said, so Bathurst is the outback hell, because it is so rough around that joint. Like Jeremy said, you don't make a mistake and, I just went off track a little bit, I'll just get back on. No, you make a mistake and
I'm dead.
And you're just going round and round and round, and then somebody's right behind you.
Yeah.
You've ruined it for them. And we're going to be doing a 90-minute event this weekend, Friday night, where we're going to simulate. We're going to do time acceleration. We're going to simulate 12 hours and 90 minutes. So the day is going to pass in 12 hours. We're going to do accelerated fuel, accelerated tires. So we have to make multiple pit stops. So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, so it'll be pretty much a direct simulation of what the guys are going to be doing this weekend. And I would love to channel my inner Van Gisbergen or Gisbergen to set the fucking world record lap time around there in a McLaren, but that's not going to happen. And we had a follow-up question as far as the practice and so on, and that is, when practicing offline, would you recommend to practice against AI or to just hot lap on your own? What would you guys say about that?
Personally, for me, I would hot lap on my own, but with a ghost car, so you can see where you're stronger and weaker against your personal best. AI is hit and miss, and I think you can pick up too many bad habits. As long as you take the basic premise of out wide, in tight, out wide, you've pretty much got your racing line, give or take, and then just perfecting your own consistency, your own performance. And if you've got a ghost, then obviously I'm sure everybody knows what a ghost is. So apologies for teaching you to suck eggs, but that's like a transparent trainer type thing that shows you your car on circuit. You can go through it. It's not a solid object, and that's an awesome way of testing out different lines and braking points and seeing. You may lose a little bit on corner entry and your ghost pull away from you, but on corner exit you can physically see the speed differential between what you did last time, or what you did on your best, sorry, and what you're doing at this moment in time. So for me, that's what I'd do, but again, personal preference.
I would agree with you. You guys that watch Jeremy streams, you guys are familiar with seeing me go out in front of him and him behind me. Well, instead of that being a physical car in front of him, it's kind of a transparent looking car, and it will be Jeremy's car on his best lap. So what you do is you train with that ghost car out in front of you, and your goal is to pass your ghost car. In other words, drive through it, and you keep setting fast times. Now, if you want to learn some overtaking moves and what we were talking about with taking different lines and stuff, that's where the AI comes in. The AI, like Paul said, is hit or miss. I use the AI to see if I can make a dive down the inside on somebody or if I can go around the outside of them. That way in a race, I know already about how I need to brake if I'm going to try to pull off this maneuver. So that's what I do. I train a hot lap to get my lines down because that's the most important thing. And then I do the other because I want to know, okay, where are my best overtaking abilities? Where are the possibilities? And I'm kind of prepared for the speed that I take through those corners. So that's what I would say about it.
That's actually a very good point.
Yeah.
And I think training by yourself as well, consistency is underrated and over important. I could be half a second a lap faster than you are every single lap, but every third lap make a mistake that costs me 2 seconds. So every 3 laps you're net half a second quicker than I am, because it's whoever wins the race is the person that makes the least mistakes.
Absolutely.
So that's the person who misses the least apexes. When I say mistake, it doesn't have to be a spin or a crash. Just doing little things where you lose half a second off what your optimal time is. If you're doing that every lap, every 2 or 3 laps, then someone can be a couple of tenths slower than you are, but don't make any mistakes. They will get to the finish line. It's all about getting to the finish line first. And that doesn't have to be the quickest on an individual lap. That has to be the quickest over the distance from green to checker. And I think that's massively underrated. People go for the dick measuring competition. Look how fast I am. Look how big this is.
Yeah.
And actually, you're great. You can be lapping in a 1 minute 40.1 and then keep doing shit laps and you're doing a 1 minute 41.5. If I'm doing a 1 minute 41.6 every single lap, I will beat you across the line every time.
Yeah, Jeremy and I are a good mix and a good example of fast or quick versus consistent. Now, Jeremy's consistent, don't get me wrong, but Jeremy is so much faster than me over a lap, especially now. And so the only way I can climb the ladder is through my consistency. And most nights, that's how I place where I place is because I was consistent. The race we just did this past weekend, I finished 4th and I qualified 9th. How did I do that? Because there's that many guys ahead of me that are faster than me. I out strategized them and my consistency was off the charts.
And I think actually that leads on to a really, really good point, because there's so many different kinds of races you can do. They can be a 20-minute sprint race in a touring car or a 1, 2, 3 hour endurance race. Consistency, sympathy for your vehicle and your tyres. Simulation games now have become so much more than just car on track, point A to B. You've got your tyre wear, your fuel economy, you've got mechanical damage as well, might come into effect, or physical damage from contact. The consistent, smooth driver that's not going in there and throwing the opposite lock on every 5 minutes and locking and blocking up the tyres every 5 minutes, your tyres will have more life into them. So you're 90% full speed at the end of a stint. If you've looked after your tyres, that can be worth 1 or 2 seconds a lap over an equally competitive driver that's I mean, R Factor 2, I love R Factor 2, but I'm too heavy on my front brakes. So when I used to race in a league a while back, there were 3 or 4 guys, all really, really top guys, and we all put 4,000-5,000 K practice in before doing the sort of endurance races. I had the same pace as, apart from the Alien Inc. group, I had the same pace as the other 2 guys. We'd do practice tests on a private server, and we'd stint. For the first 25 minutes of what would end up being a 55 minute stint, I'm with them or in front of them, maybe 3 or 4 seconds, but I'm heavier on my tyre. So I'm still driving consistently. I'm still doing the best I can with the vehicle I've got behind me. But because they've got better tyre life, because they've driven more smoother and controlled, they just power past me and walk away. And they're not driving any better. It's just the tools underneath them are more capable of giving a good lap time. So it's more than just literally car on track that you need to think about. It's having, like real racing, having sympathy for the mechanics of the vehicle will then pay you back lap time quite considerably.
Yeah, and as you talk about sympathy for the car and being consistent, the
what
guys
you're gonna
watched
say
me
now.
drift through turn 1 at Daytona in the Porsche, which did not work out for me.
The irony of that statement I was making at the time you were going sideways at 90 mile an hour was not lost on me.
How the hell I
crazy.
saved that car, I have no idea. And more so, how Marcus and Florian were able to just split and just drive around me like nothing happened, impress the shit out of me. Because you guys know as well as I do, normally turn 1 like that, granted that wasn't the opening lap, that was lap 2, but still, turn 1 at Daytona is a fairly blind corner. So to be coming into that corner and have a Porsche perpendicular to the track and those guys be able to get around me with no incident whatsoever was very goddamn impressive. And I even said to the guys in the race, like, hey, great job getting around me in turn 1 there. And we had another question in chat, and Glover, I absolutely agree. That video of the Civic passing the Commodore at Bathurst, one of the greats. But we had a question as what would be the most unforgiving track that we have driven. What's that one track out there that's just like, oh my god, this thing just will not give me a break?
Simple. The green hell.
Hell yeah. Without any shadow of a doubt at all.
Now, you want to talk about if you can drive a joint and drive anywhere, if you can get around the Nordschleife and you can be competent around there with the huge curbs that they have, with the different types corners that they have, it is just 7 to 9 minutes of hell when you're driving because there is no let up.
Now, for anyone not in the know, what is the green hell?
The green hell is there's a track in Nuremberg over in Germany, and it's called the Nordschleife, and it's, let's see here, is this right, Paul? Is it 14?
That sounds about right.
Kilometers?
14 odd K, yeah.
14 kilometers.
70 or 80 odd corners on it, something like that, is it?
Yeah, and it's where all serious manufacturers go to do their testing, and it's a track where you feel like you're going somewhere. And they used to run Grand Prix cars around there, but the safety standards, they just don't have the room and the safety standards there to let modern F1 cars run around that place. It's just not
Oh
designed
God,
for
no.
it. But it is probably the most grueling track for endurance racing there is, not weather-wise, but just because of the way the track is. There's one area there that you can really relax, and it's a long straightaway. But halfway into the straightaway, there's a high-speed kink in it, and if you get it wrong, you're dead. Then once you get to the end of that little section there, there's some twisties that you're gearing down and you're braking, and to get it just right so you don't lose too much speed is very hard. So that's what the Nordschleife is. Look it up on YouTube. Look up the Green Hell or the Nordschleife, and you'll see. And look up Sabine Smits.
Yeah, the god of the Nordschleife.
The Queen of the Ring is what they call her. Sabine Smits, the Queen of the Ring.
But don't search for Queen of the Ring, because that might bring an
That's true, I guess, you know. But there's a video of her in an endurance race passing, like, I don't know, 21 cars on the opening lap at that place.
Yeah.
Just incredible.
In the Porsches, right? That was in the Porsche Cup car that she was in, I believe.
Yes,
and Paul can give us a real-world experience now
of
because what it's like to go around that joint.
Paul has been there in person at the Sim Racing Expo, and that's obviously one of the things we have to talk about. I personally, I hate the Nordschleife. I am one of those people that think you guys failed miserably in your bombing campaign back in the 1940s by not hitting that place. But either way, what are your thoughts, especially after not only driving it in sim racing, but actually being there, actually taking a lap around the Nordschleife? What do you think of it, Paul?
Oh God, man! Bobby hit the nail on the head. Absolutely, it's infuriating, frustrating, addictive, gorgeous, evil, heavenly, all wrapped into one.
It's a woman.
Yeah.
It's a woman.
I have absolutely no comment to make on that whatsoever. I don't actually like it. I love it. I love watching races there. I love the fact that they race on it. I have infinite amounts of respect for people that do. But driving it in sim, yeah, it just drives me bonkers, to be honest. It's a track that calls to you to make a mistake. There's just blind corners with huge curbs. As Bobby sort of mentioned, there's a long straight with a little kink in it that you can relax on, but it catches you out because there's a shitload of really, really tight, dangerous off-camber blind corners immediately after that straight. So you relax, you come into a bit of a mental thing like, oh, I can take a break, and then boom, back up money straight away again at the other end. And it's an evil little track. But yeah, Jeremy, what you were saying about having been fortunate enough to do a lap at the Expo last year, that was one of the best experiences of my life. I've driven numerous karts. I've driven a few race cars in my time. But we talked about this off air actually a little bit. Because of my limited skill and limited experience, I push to whatever close to where my limit is, but it's nowhere near what the professionals can get. And we were lucky enough to go with the RSR Nürburgring, which are known as sort of like the best taxi lap service there is. And the guy who drove was Ron Simons, the guy that owns RSR. He's got 15,000 plus laps experience around this track. So he's like the most experienced guy in the world at Nordschleife. And whew, that guy did not leave a tenth of a second on the table. I mean, God, you're going around and it really draws to your attention the violence. I mean, I was disappointed when Bram says we'll go in. The Bram was the guy that owns race department, saying he's sorted out that we're going to go with this taxi company. I was disappointed. I wanted to drive. You can hire a race car. I quote race car, but it's basically a Megane with a roll cage in it. I wanted to drive it myself, but the best decision ever to go with someone who knows what they're doing. The guy, I could feel the wheels wanting to bend in on themselves because they're skipping over the tarmac, because that is literally the fastest you can go in that car around that corner. It's bouncing over the tarmac, because it's sort of like a bike riders amongst us all know when the front end starts to chatter when you put it down. The the whole fucking car, all four wheels are skipping and chattering over tarmac. And I've got an open face helmet on and a bog standard road seatbelt. I'm looking at speedo. We're doing 160 mile an hour round a corner, and next to me is a barrier 1 foot away from where I'm sat. And you think, what's that noise? It's my sphincter.
Yeah. And
the
thing is, though, you mentioned that, you know, he didn't leave anything out there, but obviously I wasn't in the car, but I'm going to disagree with you there, and only because of this. There was 4 of you in the car?
Yes.
Counting the driver, correct? There was 4 of you.
That's a meat wagon.
Plus the driver.
Yeah, four counting the driver, so 3 passengers and then Ron.
Right. So he's got 500 extra pounds on there, maybe a little bit more.
Yeah, we're all big units, so yeah.
So, and this isn't my excuse to call you fat in any way. He was pushing it to the limit of what he was comfortable having, that extra weight in the car, having people with him that he didn't want throwing up in his car. But he was pushing it far enough to make your sphincter close up tighter than the front door to fucking NORAD. But if he was out there by himself and trying to set the record for that car, I would hazard a guess there's a couple of seconds that he left out there.
Yes, I dare say so,
And to be along for that ride, the inside of your bowels would probably consist of the leather of the seat of that car.
Yeah, exactly. Because that's the thing, but to him, because he's done so many laps,
it was nothing
afterwards. It's nothing. He said it's boring going around Nordschleife now. It's only fun when it rains. Because
Jesus.
Only fun when it rains?
But it's like everything. You do something enough, it becomes second nature to you. For me,
Yeah.
that's the first time a professional's taken me around track. So that was 100 times, more than 100 times, more than I'd ever be able to get out of it. And obviously you're not in control as well, which is an uncomfortable feeling. So to me, that's like, whoa, that's eye-opening. The sounds, the smells, the noise. I was wet through in sweat, and all I'm doing is sitting there. Everything's tight, my whole body ache from holding yourself tight, and the feelings and sensations and noises, to me, it's all new. It's all, whoa, dramatic. But to him, it's just second nature. It's just as easy as your video at the moment, driving around Daytona on a sim.
What kind of car were you guys in?
It was a very, very, very souped-up BMW M3, I believe it was.
It was souped up.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, God, yeah, it had brake discs 4 times bigger than my face.
Yeah, because when Americans hear taxi service, sometimes...
yeah, we're thinking of Ford Crown Vic.
They think, okay, well, he went around the Nordschleife in a taxi. He went around in this big, heavy yellow thing. And I just wanted you guys to know that.
Performance piece of kit. Well, funnily enough, talking about the American theme, we set off at morning. Obviously, we're covering Expo all day the day before and all day that afternoon. So we set off at morning. It's in the Ardennes Forest. So no, it's not the Ardennes Forest. That's Spa. It's in the forest and everything. There's the mist hanging low in trees. It's almost like a bloody storybook. Yeah. As we're driving down, we're all kind of egging each other on, saying, "Oh, this is going to be dangerous, nerve-wracking." There's a group of people walking down the road. Only in Germany you'll get this, holding a massive crucifix with beads round them. And we drove past and thought, "Oh, that's ominous." So
Jesus!
I know it gets worse. We get there. So we're watching a few cars set off under the iconic bridge on the start-finish straight. So we're watching it, playing with drone a little bit. If the authorities hear this, we didn't play with a drone next to a live racetrack at all. Watching what's happening. And then there were a lull, and there were no cars coming. I thought, oh, it must be a break or something. We're on in 15 minutes, so let's go back and do as briefing. Anyway, an hour passes, nothing's happening. So what's going on? Because they've shut the track. There's been an accident. Oh, okay. Somebody's rolled a brand new Corvette.
Oh, Jesus!
Oh, fucking hell! Right. So we've had the religious people waving a crucifix at us, and then someone's rolled a Corvette. So the track's closed while they clear it up. Yeah, that does nothing for your mental.
Sorry, guys. I think I'm coming down with. I think I'm coming down with something. I'm not going to be able to head out on the lap.
I'm coming down with gotta be somewhere else itis.
Yes.
So
and
yeah, that were interesting.
and Joel mentioned in chat there, if you were to take the Nordschleife out, he would say Portimao, which is also known as Algarve, which we did a
Interesting
race there a
choice.
while back in the GT2 cars.
Awesome.
Yeah, I mean Portimao is definitely an unforgiving track. It's got probably the most blind corners I've seen on any circuit aside from Circuit of the Americas. Yeah,
That's not
it
a
is
track,
very
that's the
unforgiving.
abomination.
Yeah, I would agree. The only thing for me that ranks Coda above Paul Ricard is that Coda has a couple hills in it.
Yeah, I'll give you that.
And that only slightly ranks above Silverstone, which I know is I guess it's blasphemy
I don't see
to
what the
say.
big deal about Silverstone is.
Neither
I
do
don't
I.
rate it.
I genuinely
Well,
don't.
another guy in the chat mentioned Macau, and that's a damn good shout.
Yeah.
Macau is also
Incredible.
a wild circuit. I love barrier proximity. That's where where you've got absolutely zero room to make a mistake. That to me is what makes it hard.
It is exciting to watch. Personally, I'm not a fan of Macau simply for the fact that I don't think it breeds good racing because guys don't push as hard. Now, don't get me wrong. Race drivers are going to push it to the fucking limit no matter where they are. I mean, you could put fucking a race car driver in the space shuttle and he's going to say, oh, this goes 20,000 miles an hour. I bet I can do 21,000. But
yeah.
At Macau, you don't get to see the same tenacity as what you would see, at other circuits because of that barrier proximity. And like I said, it is still exciting to watch, but when you see something like the pileup that we seen last year there at the GT race, it's just, it kind of.
Oh, it's embarrassing. The track for racing is embarrassing, but as a driving experience behind the wheel, yeah,
well, you come down
hard to pass.
Come down the front straight, and it's what, 5-6 cars wide, and then halfway through the lap, you go through an area where it's barely enough room to get one car through there.
Well,
so it makes for poor racing. We want to see guys side by side.
Yeah, and if one guy makes a mistake and goes sideways and can red flag the race because he just had 30 fucking cars pile into the back of him and they have to completely shut down the circuit, it's like, okay, well, that was cool for a minute.
It's two different questions. It's what the best track is for driving and experience behind the wheel, or what's best conductive for racing, are definitely not the same answer that you would
but as far as the original question, as far as an unforgiving track, Macau is definitely there, as well as Monaco. I mean, they're very similar in that sense, or at least sections of Monaco. So yeah, I would definitely say that's one of the most unforgiving. Obviously Nordschleife has to be in there, whether I'm a fan of it or not.
And anything from Sweden. Any Swedish track is just mental.
Yeah, that especially when you fold in the world of WRC and get into rally and stuff like that. When you talk about unforgiving places, they tend to say the snow stages can be a little bit more forgiving because of the snowbanks that'll stop you, and also a lot of the guys will say we actually have more grip on the snow because we have the studded tires. So
yeah, true.
Like when you bring in the world of rallycross, Greece, hands down. I mean, Greece will fucking annihilate someone's soul when it comes to rally racing. I personally am a huge fan of rally racing. I'm super happy to see the restrictions starting to get lifted to the point that we're potentially going to see a new Group B coming into WRC, which is going to be fucking amazing. But yeah, Greece is, oh my god. I mean, if you go back and watch videos of especially some of the older Greece stages, those guys,
Acropolis rally.
Oh yeah, like I genuinely don't know how they could take a car that's got 180, 200 horsepower and get it to move their body when their balls are that large.
Just going off topic for a second, this really is a bloody good race you're having with this guy on stream.
That's Florian.
Oh yeah, and it
I've
was,
been enjoying watching this. It's a
like I
good,
said,
good fight.
it was a straight like 45 minutes until he pitted, because I was on a longer pit strategy. And then I ended up making a couple mistakes in the race and lost a lot of time to him. But my second stint in the car was on lower fuel and soft tires, and I was chasing him down like he owed me money at the end of the race. And by the end of the race, there was almost exactly a 1 second gap between me and him, and I was chasing him down at a rate of about 2 seconds or so per lap. So if I would have had another lap, I would have been by him for second place in class. But yeah, it was an amazing race.
Driver thing, if but only if.
One more, just one more. And you know, this, we do need to get to this, which is Daytona. For anybody that doesn't follow motorsports in any way, the Daytona 24 hours, the Rolex Daytona 24 hours, to kind of sound more like a broadcaster, because they always have to say the Rolex 24 hours at Daytona. It is the start of our year, basically. January 1st doesn't mean shit to us. Daytona 24, that's the start of our year for motor racing enthusiasts, because that's the first big race of the year, and everybody shows up for it. All the big boys show up. There was some really big names there this year. And I unfortunately didn't get to see the start of the race. We were setting up for the race you guys are currently watching. I know Joel got to check out the start of the race and was kind of feeding us info as we were in the server getting ready to go. And I was lucky enough to catch probably 8 or 9 hours of the race throughout it, and then was able to catch the end. The biggest problem for me, obviously being in the US, fucking IMSA TV, which is one of the greatest places to watch races as far as broadcasting, and their commentary team at IMSA TV is one of the best. Without shadow of a doubt, IMSA TV has great commentary team. But they couldn't broadcast live. Yes.
Yeah.
They couldn't broadcast live to the fucking US because of goddamn Fox. Because Fox had the TV rights and the broadcast rights to the Rolex 24 in the US. So I had to jump through a bunch of goddamn holes and bullshit to watch the race here in the US on Fox Go, some stupid ass online app thing that they have, where you go there and it's Fox's commentary team. And not that they're bad or anything like that. They're good commentators. They've been doing it for a long time. For fuck's sakes, every 30 seconds there's a goddamn commercial. And
that's right.
It was horrid. I mean, just absolutely, to the point that I wouldn't even watch the race anymore. I shut it off and just turned on IMSA radio so I could listen to the good broadcasters, and I wasn't even watching the race anymore. I was just listening to it on IMSA radio until I forget what time in the morning they were able to switch back over to the IMSA broadcast, and a bunch of politics involved and shit there. But I was at least able to watch some of the true IMSA broadcasts. Now they've put all of it up on YouTube for free. So if you guys did miss the race, you can go to IMSA on YouTube and watch the true IMSA broadcast on YouTube. So the thing I want to go over real quick, though, before we get into too much discussion as far as Daytona and stuff like that, there are, as most of you guys know, I am a huge fan of endurance racing. I think it is the absolute pinnacle of motor racing. Some people would want to put me on a cross for that, because I do not think that F1 is the pinnacle of motor racing. Fuck off. Endurance racing is the pinnacle.
Oh, we're going to have words.
I know.
I agree with you on this one, Jeremy.
See? But there are basically two governing bodies when it comes to endurance racing, big endurance racing. There's IMSA and there's WEC. Well, they're not the governing bodies, but they're, I guess, would they be considered promoters? What is IMSA and WEC really considered?
WEC is the promoter, and then it's SRO, Stefan Rattel organization. That's the governing body.
Right. So IMSA is the US side of things. WEC is the European side of things. So when, like I said, it's the start of the year for us. when IMSA kicks off, WEC starts later in the year, especially this year, because they're running a very weird season compared to what we've been used to the last couple of years. But IMSA's start of the year is always at Daytona, and it's always a 24-hour race. Now, Daytona, everybody knows Daytona because of the super speedway. The Daytona 500, the NASCAR race, is huge. For those of us that are fans of road racing, it's known for another reason, and that is what you're looking at now because of the infield and the addition of those high-speed banked corners, because Daytona is the only place like that. Charlotte has a road course as well, but they don't do races there with these type of cars, very fast cars. Now, the race we did Saturday that you guys are watching is as close as we can get to IMSA in Assetto Corsa, but IMSA uses the same GT cars, the same tin tops as we call them, but they're with different names. They're pretty much the exact same specifications, pretty much the same regulations, just different names. So the car I'm in, the Porsche 911 RSR 2017, is classified as GTLM in IMSA. In WEC, it's classified as GTE. Same car, just different names. The GT3 cars, which we didn't have in this race, but do race in IMSA, are known as GTD, GT Daytona. It's a GT3 car, which is what they call them in WEC GT3. It's the same thing you see race at Block Pain and all of that, just a different name. Now, the biggest difference is the prototype class. Now, the race that you've seen me do the Friday before this in the Daytona prototypes, those aren't raced anymore in IMSA. They used to. That was a fourth class that was in IMSA. They no longer race them. Their main prototype class now is the PC Prototype Challenge. They only have one prototype class, where WEC has two. They have LMP1 and LMP2. Now, in the race we did Saturday for Race Department, we were using LMP1 cars. IMSA uses essentially the same specifications that WEC uses for LMP2 cars. So they're slightly slower than what we were running here in the race for Race Department. They're not quite as quick as the Porsches and Audis and Toyotas and so on in the LMP1 class. But they do still make for some incredible racing, especially if you watch the actual Daytona race. Van de Zandert taking pole. It was a fucking amazing lap to watch. And in addition to that, IMSA has a Cadillac prototype. And anybody that watches prototype races, most of those cars sound like a Hoover vacuum. The Cadillac? No. It's got a big, beefy, fucking 6-liter Cadillac V8 in that son of a bitch. And yeah, God, does it sound good. It is freedom on wheels. And it's always fun to watch one of those things come peeling out of the pits. So, again, IMSA, WEC, very, very similar. The same cars with exception to the prototypes. WEC has two classes of prototypes. IMSA only has one. So, all of that explanation out of the way, if you will. A lot of guys that race in the WEC also race in IMSA. Some guys race them both at the same time. Some guys will do one season one year, then they'll do the other season the next year, and they'll kind of bounce back and forth because, well, as you can probably guess, endurance racers are gluttons for punishment. But IMSA, start of the year, get into Daytona. The qualifying was really good to watch. Again, Van de Zandert qualified pole up front in the prototypes. Jan Magnussen took pole for the GTLM class. And anybody that doesn't know Jan Magnussen, look up a video. Just type in Jan Magnussen, that's Jan Magnussen, at Laguna Seca, because IMSA races at Laguna Seca. And there's a 10-minute video of the end of the GT2 race, well, really it was the IMSA race at Laguna Seca. And it is Jan Magnussen chasing down, I can't remember his name now, but he was in a Porsche. and it's the last 10 minutes of the race of him chasing them around Laguna Seca, and it is some of the best battling I have ever seen in autosports. The inside, outside, on his bumper, hitting his bumper, coming out of the final corner, and just absolute madness. Some of the best driving from two guys I have ever seen in my life. And he qualified pole for the Daytona 24 this year. And GT Daytona, I don't actually remember who qualified pole. I know who won, but I don't remember who qualified pole. But this year, prototypes, there was, I believe, 19 prototypes. There was only 9 GTLM cars, which consisted of the 2 Chip Ganassi Fords, the Ford GTs, which are a very strong car at this point. They won Le Mans last year. They did very well this year at Daytona. So there was 2 of the Ford GTs. There was 2 Corvettes, 1 Ferrari 458, and 2 of the brand new BMW M8s, which are a beautiful fucking car. And they didn't do too well in qualifying. There was 9 GTLM cars. They qualified 8th and 9th, which some suspect they may have been sandbagging a little bit, pulling a Ford and not showing their entire hand for the start of the season. But IMSA didn't step in and, penalize them for suspected sandbagging. So I don't know. They ended up only being able to get 1 car to finish. The other M8 had to retire from the race. So the GT LM class was kind of light this year. GT Daytona had another fucking like 20 some cars or something in it. But to finish up on my long rant here, it was a great race. I definitely enjoyed watching it, what I could fucking watch of it. Did you guys watch any of the race? Did you guys catch any of it?
I did not this year. I was too busy with other things.
I got about 6.5, 7 hours-ish in. Missed the start because of other commitments, but I was fortunate enough to be tuned into the IMSA broadcast, which were great for a long period of time, and then just kept losing time all the time and chipping out and having to be F5 to refresh, which was infuriating, to say the least. But I caught it as it started to fall tonight and the rain fell. That was some outstanding racing. Marcel Fassler in the Corvette sticking it out on slicks when everybody else is coming in for wets, and just sort of doing the time differential, the amount of time he's losing. Will it dry up? Will it make... Oh, beautiful. Just exactly what endurance racing should be all about. So yeah, thoroughly enjoyed it. But a question to you guys, because I don't tend to follow IMSA all that closely during the season. When did Christian Fittipaldi become good?
Well, he's always been decent.
Don't bust Fittipaldi's balls too much.
He's always been decent. He just hasn't had the right opportunities. But
I was well impressed with him. He's a totally different character from the one that I knew. I thought he were fantastic. I would have sort of blown away a little bit. I thought, well, he's supposed to get worse as you get older, not better.
Yeah,
so,
yeah, he is.
Damn impressed with that.
Yeah, he's a good driver.
And also, the other question is, what the hell happened to Team Penske? I thought they'd be well on for a strong result.
Yes and no. I mean, Penske, anybody that follows racing in any way knows the name Penske.
Yes.
And this year was their big return to road racing. And I wasn't expecting much out of Penske. I mean, you should because of the name alone, and Penske does things right. They know what the fuck they're doing. They know how to bring good people together. But it's kind of the same as when Ford came back to Le Mans and came back to endurance racing with the Ford GT. I wasn't expecting much out of it at all. You can't really expect a ton the first year out. Granted, Ford kind of proved everybody wrong when they showed up to Le Mans and beat the shit out of everybody. But Penske, I wasn't expecting much. Next year, maybe 2 years, yeah, I think we're going to see Penske sitting at the top of the podium a couple of times, because again, actually, I don't even know if there's any team right now involved in IMSA that has more experience than Penske. So they know what they're doing. They know how to work away any bugs that they've found, even just at Daytona. So I think in the future, even in the future of this season, we're going to see them doing a lot better.
I mean, you've only got to look at the driving strength. They've got Castro Neves, who should not have left IndyCar, but hey, that's another matter. Ricky Taylor, Juan Montoya, Simon Pagenaud. Okay, Graham Rahaal's a bit of a weak link, but that's a bloody good driving lineup, and Roger Penske's still actively involved in it. I mean, that man's seen more than we forgot.
The thing that amazed me, Roger was there the entire time. That's a feat for a younger guy to stay there and stay awake for 24 hours. This is Roger fucking Penske, one of the godfathers of racing, who is, I mean, I would have to imagine in his 70s now, maybe even pushing 80, and he was there for the entire fucking 24 hours. That's dedication to a racing team. That's why Roger Penske is one of those gods of racing, because that guy knows what it takes to get it done. And that's his team. Those are his cars. Those are his drivers. He gives a shit. And he said in an interview, if they're going to be here, I'm going to be here.
That's what you've got to love, though, isn't it? The guy's absolutely rich beyond all imagination. He's achieved everything he could possibly achieve in motorsport. He's 80-year-old, according to Internet. He was born in 1937, for God's sake. And the guy still turns up for every and any event he can do that involves his cars.
I guarantee you, if they would allow it, and he could pass the physical requirements, that son of a bitch would be down there in the garage. He would be in the pit, turning a wrench, doing whatever the hell needs to be done to get that car out of there and back on the track.
Well, I guarantee drove some laps on the infield course during the weekend. That's awesome. And I bet your money he were making calls as well. He were actually making strategic decisions rather than just stood there as a figurehead.
Oh, absolutely.
Involved in the actual decision
because even when they showed him sitting there in the, I guess the control tower or whatever for the team, he had a headset on. He had the mic up to his mouth. I mean, he was involved from point A, or from race start to race finish. He was giving orders. He was saying, hey, do this, try this, bring them in, whatever. And when the team owner is there at the race, and above all, the team owner is Roger fucking Penske, when he says, hey, you guys should try this, they're going to listen.
Oh, man, if he gives instruction, you follow it. Even Juan Montoya will listen to what he's got to say. If he tells you to do something, you do it and go, thanks, boss. Yeah. Absolutely.
And
but the thing is, the man speaks sense, so it's not talking bullshit.
It comes from experience.
From a good place, Sorry, Bobby. Go on, mate.
No, I was just going to say, I think, with Team Penske, like we were talking about, they were away. All it's going to take for them is just to get back into the flow.
Mm-hmm.
The flow of the series and the events and the schedule. And we're going to see them start doing what they do in every series they run in. They're going to be competitive and at the top because, again, like you're talking about, Roger Penske knows what he's talking about.
And they've got some stiff competition. Cadillac have got a march on everybody at the moment. So you don't overturn that in a worker a moment. But I have absolutely no doubt with the power of Acura behind them. Penske as well. A hell of a strong strength.
The one really, there was two things that surprised me at Daytona. One, the start. I was able to go back and watch the start. And to see Magnussen drop back so quickly at the start of the race. Again, he qualified pole. The two Fords were right behind him. And pretty much right at the start of the race, the two Fords moved up front and took the 1 and 2 spots. And Magnussen couldn't make that time up. He never got back by him, which was really a surprise to me because, again, Jan Magnussen is a fucking amazing driver. And I'll say it surprised me that he dropped back like that, but to also take into account the caliber of drivers that Chip Ganassi has in those Fords.
Exactly.
There's actually 4 Fords in the Chip Ganassi team. There's 2 on the U.S. side and 2 on the European side. All 4 of them race at Le Mans. Only 2 of them race for IMSA. The other 2 race for all WEC races. The 2 American cars only come over for IMSA, or for Le Mans. But, you know, they had Joey Hand starting the car, who is one of the best young drivers. Well, I say young, he's not incredibly young, but in our terms, he's pretty young. And God, that kid can drive, man. Holy shit. I mean, they did an outstanding job at Daytona. Both Fords had one hell of a drive. Like I said, they took first and second pretty much at the start of the race, and they ran first and second for 24 hours.
Flat
they
chat
stayed
as well.
up
There was
front.
No holding
Oh yeah,
station.
they
That
didn't
was
let out
flat
at
chat.
all. And that's when I was watching the IMSA broadcast. You know, they were interviewing the team boss for Ford, and he was saying, we're changing drivers every stint. They didn't double stint or triple stint their drivers the entire race. They sent their drivers out for one stint and then put a new guy in, so he was fresh and no fatigue from the race. But that also meant that the drivers weren't getting much sleep, because they only had, I think, 3 drivers per car. So the drivers were saying, you know, we're only getting maybe an hour of sleep in between stints,
Brutal.
which is very, very ballsy to try and pull off, because you're putting, you know, essentially a tired guy in a car, but he's more fresh than the guy that's currently sitting in the car. And dear God, did it fucking pay off for Ford. Because by the end of the race, really, the entire race, the Fords were running 1-2, and there was about a half second to a second gap in between the 2 Fords, damn near the entire race. And to run a 24-hour race and have only a half a second gap in between 2 cars that are pushing balls out the entire time, that is fucking impressive. I don't care who you are. And by the end of the race, I think there was a 10-second gap between the 2 Fords, but there was almost a full lap between first and third by the end of a 24-hour race. That is impressive.
That's massively. I mean, that's
Yeah.
massively impressive. And also on the Ford subject, big shout out to Sebastian Bourdais, coming back from what I honestly thought would be career-ending injury at Indy, and he's just come back exactly the same driver that he left. I think Bourdais is one of the great underrated talents. What he did in kart back in day, the old IndyCar forerunner, and then what he's done in IndyCar as well. I mean, Dale Coyne Racing he was with last year, he got that car in places that it's never been before and probably never will again. The man were absolutely on form coming into Indy last year. I think he's a huge talent. He's always there or thereabouts in GT racing. He tries different things. Yeah, I think Bourdais was a big loss to Formula One when he didn't get his chance.
Yeah,
at Toro Rosso.
He could have been the Schumacher of karts,
Yes.
or IndyCar.
Yeah.
He had that opportunity. When I watched him, I'm watching this talent win year after year after year, and I'm like, please let him get a shot in Formula One.
And they did him over.
And I don't think they did him right. And I think if he had been given the opportunity, we would have seen a world championship out of him, if not more.
Well, I think the passion that he shows. I remember, I think it was Spa, but I might well be wrong. He almost got a podium and then got done with a mechanical failure, and he was in tears afterwards. How much it means to him.
Yeah.
That goes a long way. That guy lives motorsport. I mean, he's coming into his mid to late 30s now. He's had a massive injury at Indy, and he got fit and back in a car straight away. Didn't lose a tenth of a second. Straight back on it again. But talking to you guys, obviously you're closer to IndyCar than I am, purely because obviously you're based in the US and you've got more coverage than we do over here. Why does no big team snap Bourdais up? Because from what I can see outside looking in, he goes to small outfits, single car outfits at that, and he's putting his car into race winning positions time in, time out, and never makes a mistake. Why is no one snapping his hand off to sign him up a big team?
I personally think they would be, and again, this is purely, or obviously this is purely, what's the word I'm looking for? Speculation.
Opinion.
I think they're worried about the longevity of him. Obviously, Bourdais is an amazing driver. As you said, he's getting into his 30s, and that's by no means the end of a racing career for a driver. I mean, you look at someone like Kurt Team, who's in his 60s, and I just watched a video of him from last year or year before last go out in his 1990s, Mercedes DTM and just spank all fucking over people. But when you have such a pool of young talent still coming up, they say, okay, we can sign Sebastian for a year or two and maybe have, a couple of good years for a run, or we can sign this 20-year-old kid and have a run like Ferrari had with Schumacher when he was young and just take him on a decade-long trip. I think that's kind of what they're looking at, is the longevity of, is he still going to be fresh in 10 years? Is he going to be as fresh as what this 20-year-old kid is going to be in 10 years? I personally think the answer is yes, when you look at the guy's dedication, like you said, to go through an accident like that and turn around and get into what many consider one of the most difficult races in the world, that is the Daytona 24, and perform as well as he did. The answer is yes. And maybe because of this, because of him coming back after this accident and doing as well as he did, maybe he'll see some doors open back up for him. We don't know.
I agree with that. I think one thing, this is what bothers me sometimes with the mentality of some owners. I think they start looking at these guys like we're talking about, and yes, maybe the longevity's not there, but you look at him, you look at Montoya, you look at Tony Kanaan. These guys are older, they have experience, they're still incredibly quick. Why not use them and wring everything you can out of them and have a hot shoe young guy teamed with him, mentoring him? And when you get that, and when you get all you can out of him, you've extended that guy's career, built an ally. You have now got a young guy who has experience beyond his years because he's been teamed up with somebody that has got so much experience and so much success. Now you can bring in another hot shoe, and here we go. That to me would be a great way to build the team, to take one of these guys like Sebastian and do that with him and say, look, we've got you here, we want you to win, and we are going to be backing you to win. But we're going to have this guy here. Part of your job is going to be to mentor him, and you're going to race. But that's going to be part of it. And I just think it would be a great way. I think it's such a shortcut to success.
Well, I think you've hit the nail on the head. I mean, look, in the cold, hard light of day, look back on motor racing years gone by. Very, very few occasions has anybody brought a youngster in, carried them all the way through the career and reaped the reward at the end of it. Schumacher, yes, but he showed signs of being a superb talent right from the beginning.
Yeah.
So Sebastian Vettel at Red Bull, they saw a youngster, nurtured him, got a reward. Hamilton in Formula One, yeah, absolutely. Verstappen looks like he's going that way.
Yep.
But that's about it. For me, if I was a team owner, I'd look at a Bourdais of this world, and I'll have 2 championships in the next 2 years, thank you very much, rather than hoping I might get one in 5 years and probably not. Go for what's good today, and as you say, bring a youngster on with you, absolutely.
Well,
go for what's good now.
That 2 championships now also makes your team look a little bit more attractive to that next Michael Schumacher, who is an obvious talent already. And you say, hey, we'll give you this much. We just won a championship last year. We already proved that we got the card to do it. Come race with us. That makes you look a lot more attractive. Exactly.
You have the best car, the best drivers will come to you. And it's true, it's a fact. You look at any form of racing that you wish to look at. It's the exception, not the rule, to get the youngster in, to turn them in. Jan Magnussen, he was the next big thing. He dominated British Formula 3. Jackie Stewart said, I've not seen anybody as good as him since Ayrton Senna. He came in, they dropped him almost straight away. He had no career. He went to GT racing. Or people that look like they're going to be the next big thing and never quite turn into it. Jackie Stewart, again, said, be on right tyres at right time. And this is the same sort of thing. Today, I want to win a championship, get the best driver today. Don't worry if he's not going to be here in 5 years. Let's win it this season. Let's win it next. And then the next big thing will look at your team and say, I want to be involved in that. Or, as Bobby said, get a youngster in that's got that talent and squeeze every little bit of knowledge and experience out of him. And it seems bizarre because Bourdais has not been an attractive signing. Basically, since the IndyCar championship came back into life after kart, he dominated kart. He went to Formula One. It was clear as balls on a dog that he didn't get tread right in Formula One. He came back to the dying embers of what kart used to be. Again, started winning. Then it moved on to IRL kart formed IndyCar, and nobody fancied him after that.
You know what happened?
Only in his very bloody early 30s.
You know what happened there?
What's that?
That's the old guard saying, "How dare you betray us?"
Yeah, maybe
That's
so.
exactly what happened there.
I
When
mean,
he came back, because anybody would have signed him if they had any sense at all. They would have just said, "Man, you're in the right place. We're going to treat you like a king. Let's go kick ass."
I mean, Graham Rahal is a tasty driver. He's not a bad young driver. I used to love Bobby Rahal. Graham Rahal is a decent driver, but he does not deserve to retain a driver Andretti every single goddamn year in a championship-winning potential team to keep fucking up and dropping it and losing it and underperforming. Just because he's young doesn't deserve that position in that team.
Unfortunately, that's the downside of the politics in it, which is, you know, the worst part to me about motor racing is the politics. And I mean, really, at least for me, the first one to really shine light on that, even though I've never been a huge fan of F1, was Ayrton. I mean, he was really the first one to point out to everyone, like, look at what these guys are doing and how wrong it is. I don't care if I don't have the perfect name. I don't care if I don't have the right sponsors or the right look or the right attitude for you guys. I'm the fastest driver. I should win. And that's not necessarily how it worked for him.
And that's the poison of motorsport throughout the ages. It's money, name, and look. I mean, I actually don't like the guy particularly, but Sebastian Buemi, who now races World Endurance Championship for Toyota and Formula E. He was a talented guy, but he wasn't a superstar-looking person. It didn't have a superstar personality. He's a quiet guy. He's below-average looks, and he just didn't fit what motorsport and Formula One wanted. No, you can't.
That's honestly, that's honestly why I love Kimi so much. You know, granted, he's not like some ugly, disfigured dude. I mean, he's a perfectly normal-looking guy. But he is the last fucking person that anybody wants to interview because it's, oh, you know, well, when you were going into this really technical sector, what was going through your mind? Go fast. And that's all you're going to get out of him. You know, Kimi is the greatest driver, in my opinion, when it comes to interviews and shit, because he quite literally gives you the exact answer. Like, it's yes or no.
Filter.
That's it.
No filter.
Yeah.
The best interview quote in the whole wide world of motorsport with Kimi, I think it was 2007 for McLaren at Brazil. Martin Brundle went up to him. Kimi, you weren't at driver's parade. How come? So I went for a shit.
Yeah. Or the better one was that I fell asleep. That, I mean, to think.
You just lie, wouldn't you? You just lie and say, oh yeah, team debrief. You know, I had an emergency.
Yeah, exactly. No, I was taking a dump.
Yeah, I went for a shit.
Or when they ask him a question like, and you ought to know better than to ask him this question. Would you like to expand on that?
No.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's outstanding.
Very simple.
But to get back to Daytona, the driver that not necessarily surprised me because obviously he's very talented, but to come into this world was Alonso. Fernando Alonso came in when he finished his first stint. He was up in the lead in the prototypes. I mean, it was one hell of a drive.
Qualified, if I remember rightly, he was a second and a half faster than his teammate Bruno Senna, who was the reigning LMP2 world champion.
Yeah.
Shows you what talent can do.
Alonso's had absolutely... He had a crappy day in Portimao testing car, and he had the Raw. And that rated at the Raw, he hardly spent any time behind wheel. So the guy's gone in, and you know from sim racing and your own real endeavours, you can't show your true self with limited running. I can't anyway. I need a
No.
build-up period. I need 1,000 kilometers. If you put me in a car, if the three of us went in a sim racing car now, I would be last. Even if I'm as good as or better than the pair of you, I'd be last. Give me 1,000 kilometer practice, and all of us 1,000 kilometer practice. I dare say that I'd take it to you, but I can't jump into a car with very little limited running and reach my 100%.
No.
Either through my muscle memory and skill, or just my confidence in the team, the car, the track, all the different things that come with it. So for Alonso to go in there basically blind, relying on pure adrenaline, skill and reaction, and then to basically shade big name teammates. Wow.
Yeah,
in
and
an
like
environment that he knows nothing about.
Yeah, that's the thing. To come into a world that he's just dipping his toe in, and really he's not even dipping his toe in. He's fucking diving in head first to show up to the Daytona 24 to be his first race in endurance racing.
The pinnacle of an endurance driver.
Yeah, and to come in and, like you said, to overshadow Bruno fucking Senna, who, as you said, is the reigning champion in LMP2s, to do that his first time out, Jesus Christ, that is the definition of just raw driving talent. He's one of those guys that you put him in something that's got wheels, he's going to drive it to the limit.
Yeah. I mean, to me, that's a more impressive performance at Daytona than his Indy 500 race. So I know IndyCar is a very different beast to Formula One, but it's an open-wheel, single-seater car. There are similarities to be had to what he's brought up his entire racing career. But GT racing, there's a roof over your head. There's very different speed differentials between cars in your own class and cars in other classes. It's a 24-hour race. It's night racing in a car, an environment, a country, and a track that's totally foreign to him. That cannot be underestimated how impressive that really is.
Oh yeah, and when you talk about the cars in the slower classes, in Formula One, yeah, you may lap some cars. If you may lap half the fucking field, but that's what 8-9 guys. In endurance racing, especially when you're in the fastest class, the prototypes, you could lap or pass 8-9 cars in the first 10 minutes of your stint. You could pass 8-9 cars in the first 3 corners of your stint. So to be able to do that and work out the traffic of it and know if you're racing this guy for position or if he's going to pull over and let you by while you're passing the rest of this traffic, and you're going 3 wide into a corner with 3 cars that have 3 different entry, mid-corner, and exit speeds. I mean, Jesus Christ, your mind has to be running at 1 billion miles an hour.
I'll tell you something that impressed me about Alonso, and it has not so much to do with his driving, but in the beginning, everybody loved Alonso, and then we all remember the incident, what he did to Lewis in the pits. And he got a very, very bad reputation. People really started disliking him for the way he was acting when he was with McLaren, when Lewis was there. And when he left there, I think he had a long, hard talk with himself and said, I've got to find a way to still be competitive, but, be approachable and stuff. And now he's this great ambassador.
Yes.
And he is, we're getting to see his talent in all these different levels. And you see just what a true talent the man is. Well, it's unbelievable.
Do you know, sort of, just to go back to that Hamilton-Alonso season, I have, you'll notice, I have a tendency to go contrary to what everybody else thinks.
Well, that's why we like you, Paul.
Thank you, man. I think he had a hard press for that. I think the media don't get me wrong, I think Hamilton is an incredible talent. Not so keen on the man.
No, but he's the darling of the media. There is no way around that.
And I think Alonso, as a reigning double world champion, to be brought into McLaren, to be sold of the dream of being the star turn, and then, for me at least, I might be wrong, I might be a little bit sort of biased against against Hamilton on this. I think it's fairly clear that McLaren favoured Hamilton quite excessively in some of the things that they did. Maybe not where they prepared the car, but certainly it turned into a Webber-Vettel situation at Red Bull. And I think Alonso were rightly quite pissed off about what were going on. And Hamilton's slightly coarse attitude and the way he can rub people up the wrong way a little bit as a young upstart. So I can see where Alonso were coming from. That he's thinking, I've got a championship here. I'm not being backed appropriately for it. There's some shenanigans going on behind the scenes with the team. Because at the end of the day, from McLaren's point of view, Hamilton's their boy. He's going to be there for a long time. He's the first black British racing driver in Formula One, and that's marketing gold dust.
Yeah.
McLaren needed Hamilton on his very small retainer by comparison, being his boy, being all the marketing considerations. They needed him to win that championship. And I think there was some unsavoury behaviour going on in the background, which kind of explained why Alonso did what he did. And to be fair, I sympathise with him, and I think the way he was vilified after that he's showed for the following few years, where he was vilified for his behaviour at Ferrari and his demanding nature. That's exactly what Senna and Schumacher did. That's the mark of a champion.
Well, absolutely.
You get behind the team and you kick their ass when they're not doing what they should do.
They're cutthroat.
But I think, but people, after the Hamilton gate, the 2007, looked at everything he did and turned it into a negative. And I think that's really, really unfair. And the people that have missed out are us, because we don't get to see that pure talent at the front of the field through politics and bullshit.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we had the same thing happen, though, with Vettel and Webber. You know, Vettel was the darling, everything was great, but you look at the way he behaved with Webber, and Webber handled himself honorably.
He did, actually. Webber did a damn fine job, actually, of coming across as the good guy.
All I'm getting at is, here we have two examples of two guys that, you know, they had everything, and then they did something in their youth. That's one thing we got to keep in mind. They did it in their youth, but, you know, you look at...
They handled it differently.
You look at Alonso, he's recovered. You look at Vettel, he's digging the hole deeper.
Yeah. But I think the difference between the Alonso, Hamilton, Webber, Vettel thing... Webber, I love Mark Webber, massive fan of the man and the driver, but he wasn't a natural champion. He's too nice a guy, he's got too much respect. Alonso has got that Senna, Schumacher, Mansell, Vettel, Verstappen cutthroatness to him. So whereas Webber would not fall into victim mode, but have the stiff upper lip and the tough chin and sort of say, well, fuck you all, I'm still going to go do it. Alonso showed the champion mentality of, hey, wait, we are getting a championship and we're throwing it down the toilet and passing it to Ferrari. This is not acceptable behaviour. And for whatever reason, whether Formula One needed a rivalry or what, and they saw this as a good one, I think Alonso's had a damn hard press, and I think it's very, very unfair the way that he's been treated.
Well,
not
that
helped
kind
by
of
some Renault troubles as well, but
well,
now he's proving.
That kind of brings me into the next thing I wanted to talk about, to kind of shift somewhat from Daytona here. And we had someone ask earlier if I watch NASCAR at all. And personally, I don't, because I think it's incredibly boring to watch on TV because of all of the commercials and shit. And it can be exciting at times, but to watch it in person, yes, great fun. And I know that Paul loves him some oval racing.
Hell yes.
The reason I bring that up, though, is, when we were talking about the media and how they handle Alonso and Jesus Christ, how did I forget his name now?
Hamilton.
Fucking kid. There you go, Hamilton. The way they handled that and kind of vilified Alonso, which I agree with. I think they pushed a little too much there. But I think that's kind of a difference in the, not civilization, but the kind of difference in mentalities between the U.S. and the European side, if you will. Because when you turn around and look at someone like Dale Earnhardt, the original, the Intimidator, that guy was glorified for being the most ruthless motherfucker on the track. He would do anything he could to win. If that meant straight up pushing you into a wall at 200 miles an hour, so be it. He did what needs to be done to win that race, and he was glorified for it. Some people, yes, did hate him because of that, but overall, he is probably the most well-known NASCAR driver ever, even more so than fucking Richard Petty now, because most of the people that were Richard Petty fans are up there in age or dead
or passed on.
Right. So Paul being on the other side of the pond, do you see that as like a difference in mentality that, you know, here in the US we more so glorify that kind of alpha mentality of do whatever it takes, as to where on the European side it's more, it should be handled more gentlemanlike and you should not be that aggressive and things along those lines?
Well, I think from, again, it's outside looking in, obviously, because I'm based over in the UK, but it feels to me American sport and American motorsport, the media play on pantomime villains. They like a little bit of staged excitement, a little bit of fisticuffs. They like heroes and villains a lot more than Europeans do. Europeans seem to be more facts and straight cut, straight-laced about things, and sort of just call the plays as they happen, rather than them building up good guys and bad guys, to an extent anyway. But I also think it's just a change in the way the world is nowadays. That Schumacher put it really well. In his first stint, he was ruthless in Formula One. He stepped away for 3 years, came back, and in 2011 he pushed Barrichello towards the pit wall at Hungary, and he couldn't believe the reaction, the negative reaction he got for that. And he said, well, I did that all the time in the last stint, but the way that the world views this kind of behaviour had changed while he'd been gone. And it was no longer acceptable to have that win at all cost mentality, in Europe at least. And yeah, I think a more civil and gentlemanly approach, the typical, the Brits stand in the line at a queue and wait their turn type mentality, goes across over here a little bit more. But then, because, my personal opinion, the on-track product in Formula One is absolutely dog shit. There's got to be more to it now. There's got to be more good guys, bad guys, heroes and villains, just to keep a bit of the excitement alive, because the on-track product is so weak.
Well, I don't think that's really opinion at this point. I mean, I'm sorry, but it's plain fact. F1 has become fucking boring. I mean, that's all there is to it. There's a reason that the ratings have just continuously been dropping.
Yeah, it's dreadful.
Yeah.
It's dreadful.
And yeah, I think you're right as far as the kind of the theater of it all. You know, we like our heroes. We like to have someone to root for, which, I mean, that's the same in any auto racing, but you know,
it is, but it seems to be exaggerated slightly.
Yeah,
I mean, you get the whole thing, like the ticker tape flows down when people come into the racing arena. They did it in the US Grand Prix, tried it a little bit, the whole having an announcer and a call, and everything's got a grand sponsor's name and stuff. Like, it's not a fastest lap, it's the Budweiser fastest lap sponsored by Gatorade or something like that.
It was horrible.
Yeah, it's the whole the US, for, again, outside looking in, it looks like the US like to put a show on more than Europeans. Where Europeans come to a motor race, they watch a motor race and they go home. The US side of things want to be entertained throughout. They want the pom-pom girls, the whole shebang, and the we do it bigger and better.
And I guess it's also
heroes.
It's also a difference, I guess, in the racing style as well. Because I mean, you look at like BTCC. I mean, those guys beat the fuck out of each other, and everybody loves it. Yeah. You know, but I still don't think it's quite to the same extreme as what it is in NASCAR. Even still today in NASCAR, I mean, in stock car racing, contact isn't expected. It's required. You know, there's a whole technique known as bump drafting to go around the super speedways, where you purposely run into the back of the guy in front of you to push him and make him go faster, which makes both of you go faster. So
at 200 miles an hour.
Yeah. So we made, you know, racing techniques that are around hitting each other. But, you know, like when you talked about Schumacher pushing him up towards the pit wall, in NASCAR, it's not, you know, not just expected to squeeze someone up into the wall and, you know, straight up push them into the wall and grind their car against that wall. It's cheered on. You know,
Yeah.
or if someone gets up underneath your bumper and just stays in the throttle and spins you out, not only are a lot of guys expecting you to slow down because they just won the race and they're doing their parade lap, not only do they expect you to slow down and smoke that guy as he comes by you, they fucking cheer them on when that guy comes rolling by with the checkered flag out the window, and the dude that he spun out to win the race plants his bumper in the guy's quarter panel and spins him out after the race is over. People cheer them on when they get out of the car and start fighting. Yeah, could you imagine F1 drivers purposely wrecking each other at the start-finish line and the two of them getting out of their car and start throwing fists? They would never have a career.
Look at not Verstappen, Vettel and Hamilton this year, Azerbaijan.
Yep.
Vettel, rightly or wrongly, thought he were brake checked, and he went up inside and he just gave him a little bit. I don't think he meant to hit him. I think it was more, hey, I've got the bigger ball.
Yeah, I think he meant to get close to him, but he tapped him a little bit.
But come on, it were about 3 miles an hour under safety car.
It was nothing.
No danger, and everybody were almost like he tried to sleep with his firstborn child. For the love of God!
Oh, yeah, they thought he was trying to decapitate him with the front wing of the car. It's like, guys, nothing. He barely even got any of the paint off the rubber of the goddamn tire.
If it had done that at 200
and the guy
miles
still
an hour,
won the race.
Yeah, exactly. Just be men. Grow about it. You're putting your life on the line. You paid a lot of money. You've got a lot of responsibility. And sometimes in sport, tempers flare. That's fine. And actually, you know what? I want to see a little bit of that. I don't want it to get stupid and they're fighting and they're doing not a Jeff Gordon. Who was it in NASCAR that likes to hammer everybody? Yeah, pretty much. Or in hockey, where that's just part of. I think that hockey. I hate hockey.
AJ Foyt's whipped half the guys he's ever raced.
Yeah.
Yes. And you need a little bit of personality in there, but everything's over-sanitized over here. There's too many rules and regulations. There's too much. Nobody dare race anybody, because if you make a mistake, you get a penalty for it. Not appropriate at all.
Well, we're a nation of fighters because, you know, you had a group of people leave England to come here. And so America has had that fight mentality, and it's never left us.
Yeah, we're still always looking to where we can get into a fight.
And to a point, that's where it should be, because that shows passion.
In auto racing, absolutely.
At the end of the day, you're driving, you put within reason, even with today's safety measures, you're putting your life on your line in a very, very, very fast, very heavy rocket that will smack into something and hurt you. So you've got to have a little bit of passion, and you want to see a little bit of passion, and you want to see it out on the racetrack, but we don't seem to be getting that in open wheel cars, because I think personally they've got too fast and they're too easy to drive. Now maybe it's because I was younger then, but when I watched Formula 1 in the 90s, and it might be rose-tinted glasses, but they were men. They were big, stocky men. They had mustaches. They did something, and you look at them and think, fucking no chance I can do that. Now kids are doing it, and it's just glorified computers, as somebody's put in the comment, and it's absolutely right.
Well, see, there's two. Well, at least I have two schools of thought on this, because as I said earlier, I don't think that F1 is the pinnacle of auto racing. It hasn't been in a long time, since, like you said, probably the 90s, even the early 2000s, when they still had the V10s and, you know, the Schumacher era, if you will.
It's the technology that it's the pinnacle of.
Right. And that's that's where I say that I have two schools of thought on this, okay? If you want F1 to be the pinnacle, then make it the absolute fucking pinnacle. Either go to one extreme or the other. Either take every driver aid off of that car and give them, you know, the kart days of 1,500 horsepower and 1,000 foot-pounds of torque and a manual gearbox, and make those drivers truly drive that fucking car, or go to the other extreme and show us what is possible in a vehicle that has 4 wheels, and make it as computer assisted as possibly can be. And sure, the driver's basically in there on autopilot, but that car will go around Nürburgring GP in 34 seconds. Give us one extreme or the other. Stop with the amalgamation of the two and trying to blend them together. It has to be one or the other.
I might be oversimplifying it a little bit, but I always thought the pinnacle of motorsport should mean the pinnacle of driving ability. not the technology that's crammed within it.
Yeah.
It should be. I should look at motor racing and think I can't do that. That's beyond what mortals can do. They're
Right.
heroes. I look
Well,
at
that's
Formula One,
why.
and apart from neck strength, I could drive a Formula One car even as unfit as I am now. I could drive one at 80%. If I got my neck right and had enough time behind wheel, I honestly could drive a Formula One car to 95%, no problem.
Well,
But you
that's
put me in a
why.
1600 brake horsepower turbo car
Yeah,
for the
you're
80s
dead.
with a H-pattern box, I ain't got a fucking chance of doing that.
Well, I'll
I won't
tell you
even get it out at
something.
pits.
Something somebody just mentioned, and this is correct, and you know, we have failed to talk about it, but if you really want to look at the pinnacle of driving, there is only one formula out there that shows it, and that is World Rally.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
They
well,
have
I was.
the biggest balls. They have more talent in their little finger than a lot of guys do in their whole body. That's not to say that you couldn't put an F1 guy in a rally car and he'd do well, but these guys go out there and they're truly risking life and limb when when you're doing 120 miles an hour through a forest that's
In the
gravel with
snow.
jumps and mud. Are you kidding me?
Well, that's why I say endurance racing is the pinnacle. And by endurance racing, I don't just mean WEC and IMSA. Endurance racing to me is the absolute pinnacle because those guys have to be on it 100% the entire time. And anybody that's driven in any type of car for a period of time, you know, I've spent 36 hours straight behind the wheel of a car just driving on roads. And the endurance that it takes for your body to be able to drive for hours on end like that. And obviously drivers don't, you know, drive for 24 hours straight. There's multiple drivers, but they're driving at 10,000% of what you are going down the highway in your car. It's mind-boggling. And with endurance racing, again, not just WEC and IMSA, but you also have to take into account the guys that do the NORA 1000. I mean, that's one of my lifelong dreams, is to go down to Baja and watch the NORA 1000 one time.
Yes.
And there are guys, I mean, Iron Man made his legacy out of doing the NORA 1000 himself, you know. And for him to go down to Baja, especially back in those days, because it was much more, even more wild than what it is now, and believe me, it's still fucking wild now, but to go down and spend 12, 13 hours in a truck racing at 100 mile an hour flat out through the Mexican fucking desert with God knows what coming up, over 1,000 miles by yourself.
In the most extreme conditions you could possibly imagine for a motor vehicle.
And for those guys to do that, the NORA 1000, the Dakar, I mean, it's just, that is genuinely beyond a human level. Those guys have trained themselves to a superhuman point. I mean, there's a great documentary out there called Dust to Glory. I recommend everybody watch it. It's about the NORA 1K, the Baja 1000 basically. And there's this kid in it. It's fucking horrible that I can't remember his actual name. His nickname is Mouse. He drove the entire NORA 1000 on a dirt bike by himself. He never swapped out drivers. Oh my God. He ended up dumping the bike, and I'm pretty sure he broke his wrist. His wrist was pretty fucked up. I'm pretty sure it was broken with like 50 miles left to go. So this guy has done 950 miles on a bike alone through the Mexican desert and was doing really well as far as position. And he dumped his bike and broke his wrist. And that kid finished the fucking race. He drove the last 50 miles and finished the race and did a full 1,000 miles on a dirt bike solo. See, that hasn't been done since Iron Man Stewart. No one has driven the NORA 1K alone since Stewart did it decades ago. And this kid didn't do it sitting down in a truck. Well, they'll let you race anything you want down there. NORA. You can show up. You can show up in your Toyota Corolla and say, "I want to race the NORA 1K." Have at it. We'll see you out there. because that's, to me, the reason the Baja is so special is not only the raw talent and ability that it takes just to finish the race, it's the community around it, and that, you know, those guys can be racing against each other and they will do anything they possibly can to help out the other team. You know, Robbie Gordon, who is huge in NASCAR, he's said multiple times that his true love is off-road racing. That's
He's a legend in it.
Yeah, exactly. Robbie Gordon is God at Baja. I watched that guy help someone do a fucking pit stop or tire change while they were doing pre-running, which is basically their practice. And this is Robbie Gordon. I mean, one of the most well-known names in the U.S. when it comes to auto racing. And this dude is helping a rival team change tires down there pre-running and saying, oh yeah, I was having difficulty here. How are you guys doing here? Well, why don't you guys try this? Hey, if you do this with your ride height, it can help out in this section. That's what we're doing. Like, he's giving these guys tips. You know, guys that are competing against him, he's giving them tips to finish this race. Like, that mentality doesn't exist in normal motorsports.
No, that's
that's a Baja exclusive thing.
It's something like you know, Formula One is very sterile. The environment, it's all upper class, high class stuff. But if you watch that Dust to Glory that Jeremy's talking about, or Dirt to Glory, whatever it is, what you'll notice is just how much punishment the drivers take.
Oh yeah, when they get off the bike or out of the car, they look like they just went through a heavyweight boxing match.
And I think that there's a special bond amongst competitors because there have been many people go down and try it, and they just can't do it. They wimp out 100, 200 miles into it. It's just, oh, we can't do this. This is insane. You know, it's too tough.
I mean,
and
when
the car's the same way. You know, it's a special brotherhood.
Yeah, and when the man himself, when Mario fucking Andretti goes down to Baja and drives basically a toned down trophy truck through part of the course, and that guy looks at the camera and says, had I found this before Formula One, no one would know the name Mario Andretti. That's how powerful that place is for, you know, what most people consider God in auto racing. For Mario Andretti to say, I would have done this had I known about it instead of Formula One, that's a pretty big fucking statement for him to say, yeah, this is better than F1.
It's pure motorsport, that's why. Formula One and motor racing in general is business now, and it's no longer people enjoying themselves and having a good race. It's all about the last tenth and getting the victory, representing your brand, saying the right thing at the right time.
It's not about fun.
No, it's not. And that's actually going back to sim racing. That's what's the beauty of sim racing. It's all the stuff that you love about motor racing, but with none of the politics and crap and big money.
We don't have to thank our sponsors.
No, we're just getting there, have some fun, hopefully race a couple of guys, or girls, whatever, and enjoy the spirit of competition and fighting.
Well, I guess the last type of auto racing I want to kind of cover here before we get on to the last part is that dreaded thing known as Formula E, which is the all-electric Formula cars. They look like an F1 car, but they're all electric. They only have 2 gears. It's getting, I guess, more popular. I personally am not a fan of it. I don't like the courses. I don't really like the cars, or I didn't like the cars. Now, the reason I say I didn't, Paul here put up a very interesting article, I believe it was last night, or yesterday sometime, of the new Formula E car. Now, again, I'm not a big fan of Formula E, but my fucking God, is that new car beautiful. Jesus, if you were to put Lexan over the Halo and take the wheels off, you could easily pass that off in some sci-fi movie as a futuristic fighter jet. And to show you guys what I'm talking about here, I'm going to throw the picture up on screen for you. That's the new Formula E car. holy fuck. Like, even the halo doesn't look that bad on this car. I love the way this thing looks, and those arches coming up over the rear wheels. I mean, I don't care if it's electric or not. Cool. That thing just looks fast sitting there.
I'm not seeing the picture.
Sadly, though, it doesn't go fast.
Yeah.
There it is.
It goes fast in a short distance very quickly. But yeah, this doesn't mean I'm going to start watching Formula E or, you know, get excited about it or anything. But for fuck's sakes, why doesn't F1 look anything like this? I mean, you want something exciting. You want something exciting. Well, yeah, true. But you want something exciting to look at. Fuck, man. That is nice to look at.
Well, I can't, you know, I don't want to hear.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to hear that. You know, I want to hear that just, bah, bah, you know, that screaming sound.
That's the thing with, you know, with auto racing. A lot of it is about the overall experience. It's not just watching cars go around a track. You know, there's a reason slot car racing isn't the most popular fucking thing on TV. It's the overall experience, and a large part of that experience is the sound and the smells in person. You know, to smell Torco Blue race fuel at a drag strip. Oh my God, it's one of the greatest things ever. Like I was telling someone the other day, you know, we were talking about doing donuts or something or burning tires, and I was like, burning tires. I mean, tire smoke. That's perfume to us guys at a drag strip. You know, that's part of the experience. And Formula E doesn't have that. It sounds like mom just turned on the fucking Dyson.
Well, the whole thing is underwhelming. I've been to the Formula E factory. I've been to 3 test sessions and 1 race because I've tried to give it a chance. I don't like Formula E at all. I ventured that opinion once upon a time in public and got hammered for it, saying that I only don't like it because it's electric and all that good stuff. Not true. I'm a grown man. I'm an adult. I don't have to be fanboyish over everything.
Right.
I can look at something. I like motor racing. I will watch bathtubs on wheels if it's a good bloody race. I'm not bothered.
Yeah.
But Formula E, it's underwhelming in every aspect. The racing, in my opinion, is rubbish. The tracks are wholly inappropriate apart from the fact they happen to be in a city centre, which is cool. The cars, I'm not impressed about. The whole thing is just amateurish. And a good example, I say a few years ago, probably 10 years ago now, Renault used to do a really good initiative wherein the Renault World Series, the 3.5 World Series it were called. I think it's Formula Renault V8 now or something. Their equivalent, their one make championship equivalent to GP2, used to go around the world, and the tickets were free to try and get as many people through the door as you could. Great cars, V8s, beautiful sounding things, but they had a Formula One demo there as well. So at the time it were Roman Grosjean that were the test driver, and it took the whatever it was 2008 or 2007 spec Renault car out, did a few donuts, did a few fast laps, etc. And I took my wife to try and sell her on the idea of motor racing is awesome, and she enjoyed the whole weekend. But the Formula One car is the thing that sticks in her mind. It's an assault on every sense you've got. It smells like motor racing. It smells like burning carbon brakes and tyre smoke. It's loud. It makes you stand back. The velocity of when it goes past you makes you stand back and go, fuck.
Yeah.
And that's...
In a Formula E car, it's a little bit like being caught out when you think you can fart and get away with it and you're not near a toilet. And you go, hey, this might be all right. Oh no, that one massively disappointing on every level.
Well,
and that's nothing to do with the fact it's electric. It's just the whole principle of it. It'd be an outstanding technology. An outstanding platform to test technology, but don't brand it as motorsport. Don't try and make it so they compete against each other. Put some AI in and let it go through an obstacle course, and yippee-ki-yay, we've got a good time. But as a sport, it's just it's very underwhelming, and the racing's crap, and the cars are slow and don't look impressive.
Just give the cars to DARPA and let those guys have fun with it, and you know they'll turn it into a tank or something. But you know when you bring up the sound, this is something that this video was kind of demonstrating on Saturday, the sound of things. And this Porsche 911 RSR, the 2017 that I was driving, it's a screamer. And the reason for that being, last year at Le Mans, Porsche unveiled this new exhaust for the 911. And my God, it transformed the car.
Bonkers.
For everybody watching. It didn't make the car any faster. It didn't do really anything for the car. It might have given a little bit of extra horsepower for better flow, or because of better flow. But for those of us watching, you have never heard a flat six engine sound like that car. It is completely unique to that car. And when it hit me, was watching, I think it was practice 3. They come by the camera, and the first car to come by was a Corvette. Now the Corvette's got like a 6.2 or 6.4 liter fucking V8, naturally aspirated. I mean, it's true blue American muscles, got that low down deep grumble, and sounds like freedom on wheels. The Porsche comes through maybe a second behind it, and the scream of that little flat six completely drowned out that Corvette. You could not hear it at all. All you could hear was that Porsche. And another really good depiction of it is there's a clip out there from Nicky Team, who's an Aston Martin factory driver for WEC. They were at Dubai doing their testing. All the manufacturers were there, and he's filming it on his cell phone, which obviously isn't going to do it that much justice, but it does it enough. And they're sitting right on the pit straight, and one of those Porsches comes down into turn 1. And Jesus Christ, the scream that comes out of that car, and the guy sitting next to him has to plug his ears because that car is so loud. How they get away with it and not break noise restrictions and stuff, I'm calling bullshit. I think they're breaking noise restrictions on every single race they go to, or every single track they go to. But the thing that surprises me with that car is that just by changing that exhaust, that car has almost become a fan fucking favorite just because of how it sounds. Everybody is in love with that 911. Whether they like Porsche or not, people are in love with that car because of how it sounds. And that surprises the hell out of me. Like, did that car blow you guys away as much as it did me?
Absolutely.
Beyond. Sorry. It is as close to a screaming banshee V10 sound from a normal engine, you know, like a V6 or a flat 6 or a V8. It's insane, the pitch that thing reaches, and just it sounds like it's about to come apart. It's incredible.
But yeah, that's what you want. That people don't remember.
Yeah, that rawness.
Sorry, start again. People remember I remember Panos. Who the hell remembers Panos? No, but you go to a track and you listen to that bad boy and you hear it coming in the GT1 days over the Mercedes and the Porsches and everything. A big grumbling, loud as sin, 10 decibel louder than everything else.
Same with
recall the Panos.
The Mercedes C9, the Sauber.
Yeah.
I mean, or in the same class, or at least it was for a minute, the Mazda, the 787B.
Absolutely.
You know, that car has become a darling. It wasn't a good car. It did... Well, I won't say it wasn't a good car, but yeah, everybody in that follows motorsports somewhat closely knows that car. They know that orange and green Mazda 787B, not because of how the car looked, how the car drove, how it performed, simply because of the sound of that car.
Yes.
And the Sauber is a lot the same way. That Sauber had a very unique sound and turbo flutter. And when they kicked in with that thing and that turbo spooled up, there's no other car in the world that sounds like a Sauber C9 at full chat.
But stuff like that is what inspires the next generation of fans. People don't watch Formula 1 and go, oh God, kinetic energy recovery systems. I'm all over that shit. That is awesome. I am going to be involved in motorsport at grassroots level because one day I want to drive something with KERS. They don't give a toss. They want stuff that blows them away. They want things that impress them. I always remember from the mid-90s BMW Super Touring car, the Joe Winkelhock one, that high-pitched whine of the gearbox whine that goes, That
straight
stuff,
cut gears.
beautiful stuff.
And that's
that.
well,
It sticks with you.
the thing that I guess is kind of the other side is, I will say that I do think the amazing engineering does still inspire people, not to the same extent. And the reason I say that is the Ford GTE car. When Ford introduced that car in 2016, nobody was really that impressed with it per se. They ended up winning Le Mans with it, and now people are, kind of opening up to this Ford that everybody calls, basically a prototype and with a GT body on it and stuff, because it is. It has a lot of the same technology into it. But the reason I say that car is going to inspire future generations with its engineering is simply because Ford took what is essentially an engine out of an F-150, a pickup truck. They took that engine, obviously tweaked it to the fucking nines, to its absolute limit, and put it in a race car and went and won the biggest race in the world with it. That is some amazing engineering. And I think those type of people, race engineers, future car developers and stuff, the people that are interested in that technical side of things, they'll look at that 20 years down the road and say, Ford took an engine from a pickup truck that's designed to haul your camper trailer and went and won the world's biggest race with it. What can we do with this car sitting in the 2025 Mazda Miata? Can we take that engine and put it into a prototype and go win a race with it? And
it flies in the face of Ferrari.
Oh, absolutely. But that's also the reason that I liked what Toyota did with sorry, not Toyota, but Nissan, with their prototype, with the front biased car that they had, and the non-traditional prototype system that they had in it, with the floating flywheel and not using straight batteries. They were using a kinetic system, and the car didn't do great, but they had the balls to go the opposite direction of everybody else and try something completely different, and I love that.
I do think I see where you're coming from, and I do agree to a point, but I think it all depends on as well the perspective of the audience. Like for me, on-track product is the be-all and end-all. Formula E, the technology, to go back onto where we started, the technology in that is undoubtedly very, very impressive. To get batteries to perform like that, and this new generation car, they're going to have a longer battery life, so you don't need to do a driver change mid-race anymore. It can do a full race distance at more speed. The rate of development, well impressive, what they've done. But the on-track product's garbage, so I don't care. And that's the thing, for me, inspiration comes from having a championship that everybody wants to be a part of. If they, oh my God, that's amazing, and then you want to go in there, and then it's looking for the advantage, like Formula One used to be. The rules weren't particularly tied down, so people go in there, they buy a DFV engine, they mount it on the chassis on the chassis at the rear, they go racing, they build a decent car, and then Lotus come along and they do a double floor, or they come along and do a double chassis, or they'll come along and do ground effects. But it's not because of engineering for engineering's sake, it's to get the advantage to win the race, because everybody wants to be involved in the racing. Technology for technology's sake is dangerous. I always thought the pinnacle of technology should be World Endurance Championship, or whatever the equivalent is at that time. So you've got your LMP1H that are doing the hybrid, the battery tech, that are doing all the clever different road relevant stuff.
It kind of is now.
To a point, but I think they need to take that out of Formula One and make that. There's no need for Formula E having an electric category in LMP in GT racing.
I think that's kind of the problem, though, with F1, in the sense that it's not the pinnacle because of the restrictions of what they're allowed and not allowed to do.
I mean,
as to where you look at
wonderful.
Well, where you look at
a 24-hour race.
Yeah, when you look at LMP1, that class is the most open as far as restrictions. I mean, that's why Nissan was able to do a completely different hybrid system than anyone else, because the restrictions are so open. To me, that's the pinnacle. That's those guys saying, okay, what's the absolute maximum that we can get out of this, machine? And what's the absolute maximum that we can get out of these drivers? Can you do a double stint? Can you do a triple stint? Will the tires last? Will the engine last? All of that, that's the absolute tip of what is possible with a car.
You've actually nailed it there. Because endurance racing is by very definition a race of endurance, the entire field of 30, 40, 50, 60 cars or whatever don't have to be nose to tail. It's a 24-hour race. Half of the intrigue is who's going to get to the end first and fastest. There'll be pockets of close racing like we saw with the Fords and everything, and that can keep your desire to have a fight alive. That's no problem, but that's the right format to then put these wild experimental technologies in, like electric and like hybrid and recovery, super long distance fuel economy and stuff. Formula One is a 90-minute sprint race, so that should absolutely, it's 90 minutes, it's short, sharp entertainment where you watch it, and there's 24 cars fighting for every inch of tarmac for that full 90 minutes. Formula E, awesome idea, but they put it on street tracks where you cannot overtake. So the on-track product, again, is crap. All this technology needs to go into prototype racing or endurance racing, and then that could all be tested out on the racing scene and developed quickly and made road relevant. But the on-track product's not spoiled because it's still who's going to get to the finish line first. Formula One back in the 90s, you had a V8 Ford, you had V10 of your Renaults and all that good stuff, and a V12 Ferrari. Ferrari, shitload of torque, hell of a lot of high speed, very poor on fuel. V10, reasonable on fuel, reasonable pace, but they wouldn't compete. It's who could get to the checkered flag first. V8's Mika Salo got 5th at Monaco in 95, 94 with his not a V8, yeah, a V8 in a Tyrrell. That because he could go the full race distance without stopping for fuel, that made it entertaining. But putting all this into Formula One now just dilutes from the actual racing experience. Put it on a 24-hour or a 12 or a 6-hour endurance race, then the different technology, they can all be spread about by 20, 30 seconds. It doesn't matter because it's an endurance race, and you'll still get pockets of close racing anyway.
Well, yeah, and with endurance,
works perfectly.
Yeah, and with endurance racing, yes, they're obviously racing each other. I mean, it's a goddamn race, but like you said, it's nothing to have a 10-minute gap in between first and second place over a 24-hour race. It doesn't matter, because while they are racing each other, truly they're racing time itself.
Time and technology, they're racing the persons themselves.
And it's, they're racing the one constant in our life that everybody says you can't beat. These guys are proving it otherwise.
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody says that, well, you can't get around Le Mans in X amount of time. It's just not possible. You can't do it. You can't go that fast. There's not enough time. Well, last year, they turn around and disprove that by smashing the fucking lap record, and that to me that's what makes it special and exciting to watch. Not necessarily just the close racing. Obviously the close racing is fun to watch, but it's more so the attrition and whose car is going to make it, which driver is going to do it without a mistake. Yeah. And to see a driver go out there or come back in and they do an interview and him saying, yeah, I just did a triple stint. To imagine what it takes to do 3 hours or more of absolute balls out driving, it's otherworldly.
And that's the thing as well. Nowadays, it genuinely is balls out driving. In the 60s, 70s, and 80s, you drove at 80% to save the car. Now, it's a 24-hour sprint from beginning to end. You are flat chat all the way through. And that's incredible. That makes a wonderful spectacle.
As I can't remember his name now, the IMSA broadcaster that you had mentioned before we went live, as he says...
John Addison.
Yeah, as he says in the kind of intro for IMSA, welcome to the world of endurance racing, where you have hour-long sprint races in between pit stops.
Yes.
And that's what it is. It's an hour-long sprint in between each pit. And then they come in, they get, however many minutes, depending upon, if they're doing a brake change or, whatever they're doing. And then they're back out there again for another hour. And then they come in and do another pit. And then they go out for a third stint, or maybe they do a driver change. And the next guy has to go out there and push just as hard as his buddy was, if not harder, depending upon where they're at in the race and how much time they have left.
It's absolutely incredible.
Yeah,
I think we're in a really weird time right now, and I think that's what's going on with Formula E and Formula One. And what we're looking at is Formula E is kind of it's a niche thing. Everybody's on this green movement, so they're appealing to that, and
yeah,
so you got a lot of people buying into it. I think it's going to be a flash in the pan type
I
product.
do too.
Formula One is trying to get the reputation of, oh, we're environmentally sensitive, so we're doing all this stuff. Well, guess what? That's not what we watch Formula One for. But
Exactly.
WEC and IMSA see, when you start getting into that, they have the formula
Exactly
because
right.
they're spitting and screaming with engines, but also they're taking the technology and putting it in there. So we're exploiting everything. And so it's this great, just
it's a good
entity,
mix of
yeah,
both.
that you can see everything. So I think that's what's happening right now, and I think that Formula One will have to find its way back to what it was. I think Formula E will die out, and I think that stuff like what we're talking about with the endurance racing is just going to get more and more popular because people are going to say, "Hey, I can watch that," and it's kind of Formula One, Formula E combined.
And
Yeah, you've
that's
hit it far more succinctly than I could ever have done it. That is exactly right, in my opinion.
and they are doing a mix of both. Like I said, when you look at the engine that's in the Ford, it's a very tiny EcoBoost V6, very fuel economy in mind. And then when you look at something like the Aston that still has a V12 in it, even the brand new Aston that they just brought out at the start of this year, I watched I watched an interview the other day, again with Nicky Team, who's one of the Aston Martin factory drivers for WEC, when he was out testing the new Aston. And they asked him, and anybody that's seen Nicky Team before, he's an incredibly entertaining guy. You would think he just fucking snorted a rail of coke before he went on camera at all times. One of the most entertaining race drivers you'll ever see. But the person asked Nicky, how does it feel to drive what is probably the last V12 race car that's going to be made? Because everybody's going smaller or less cylinders with turbo and stuff like that, going for smaller displacement but more power with additives. And so they say, how does it feel to drive what's probably the last V12 race car that's going to be made? And for a guy that's normally very joking and very laughy and stuff like that, he got kind of serious for a minute, and he was like, it's an honor to know that I'm driving the last of a breed. And that kind of hit me like, wow, I mean, he really is. I mean, to think how long that we've had big screaming V10s and V12s and auto racing and stuff, and they truly are dying out, not just in racing but in cars in general. And to imagine what it's like to be that guy out there driving, knowing that this is the end of an era, really, and you're the one at the helm of the ship, if you will. Like, that would not only
and it's
would
such
it,
a brand.
yeah, and it's Aston fucking Martin. And
That's right.
not only would it be, I guess, an honor, but I would feel like there's a little bit of added pressure to perform, to show that the V12 still have it. They can still get it done.
I just think it's sad that we've gone down that route. Motorsport, Formula One in particular, but motorsport in general, should be about burning a colossal amount of fossil fuel to get from point A to point B, very loud and very quickly.
Yeah.
Nothing more, nothing less.
Everybody that knows me knows what I feel about batteries. Batteries are for flashlights.
Yes.
Yeah.
Period. End of story. And racing is about things going bang and
Yep.
smoking tires. It's about burning fuel. It's about the whole thing. And that's why NASCAR, somebody asked about NASCAR. Uh, People that aren't NASCAR fans, if you ever get a chance to go to a NASCAR race, you will quickly
Oh, it
become a
will convert
fan
you.
in person
Yeah.
because the smells and the sounds. I mean, I've been at two places that will blow you away. One is Talladega, where they're doing over 200 miles an hour on a 2.5 mile track. The other one is Bristol, Tennessee, where you
Oof.
have this little bitty half-mile track and there's 42 cars in the field. So, when they get strung out, it's nose to tail the entire lap. So, and you're right there on top of it, and it is just amazing. And so, motorsport is about an assault on the senses, like we talked about earlier. That's what's so awesome about going to a Formula One event where a V10 is around, because once you experience that, kind of like sex, once you've
Yeah.
had it, you just can't get enough of it.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
exactly right.
yeah, and I mean, since we are running a little bit long, and I expected that, what I want to go on to now, semi quickly, is I want to ask you guys, what are you looking forward to most in real world racing this year? What's the one thing, the one event, the one car, whatever? What's the one thing you're looking forward to most this season in racing? Is there a specific event that you're looking forward to, or a specific class, or whatever?
Oh, another big question.
Yeah.
Very, very
If
big.
if I may be so bold, I'd like to venture forward two, and that would be Alonso and how he gets on in his World Endurance campaign and Le Mans, and also the newly rebranded World Touring Car Trophy, or whatever the hell they call
Yeah,
it.
whatever they're calling it.
Yeah, so basically, just see, I'm a touring car fan at heart. I'm a big fan of TCR regs and formalising and standardising the format across the world. I also think manufacturer involvement in motorsport is cancer to me. I don't like manufacturer involvement in any
Hurting it.
way, shape, or form. Spoils it, ruins it, absolutely ruins it. So
You can't have a Team Heath today. You can't have a Terrell.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. So
You
to
stole my
have,
thunder though,
oh
with
no,
Alonso and Lamar. I mean seriously,
sorry.
that is the one thing that I was really looking forward to. I'm a Formula One fan. I love it. I'm not looking forward to anything. It's just I'm gonna watch another season and hope that the next one changes, and hope that the next one changes until they get it
Like the last
right.
10 years, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
so I'm
the
looking forward to Alonso and what he does in WEC.
the thing I'm most looking forward to is actually something that me and Paul were talking about before we went live, and that is, again, also Le Mans, but it is the prospect of a privateer winning Le Mans, of a non-manufacturer team potentially winning the biggest race in the world, because Porsche and Audi and Porsche and Audi have pulled out of Le Mans. They are not going to be racing there this year, which leaves Toyota as the only manufacturer LMP1 car at Le Mans this year, unless the fucking Sith factory of Ford is going to roll out another fucking car and they decided not to test at Daytona. Everybody's been speculating that Ford is going to announce an LMP1 car very soon, but personally I
That's
think
a bit ballsy.
yeah, personally I think if they didn't announce it at the end of the year and brought it to Daytona, they're not doing it this year. I think they're still working on it, if they're working on it at all, because they would have wanted to get the testing in at Daytona. So I don't think it's going to happen this year. So with Toyota being the only manufacturer in LMP1 now in the WEC, they only run 2 cars. So that means at Le Mans this year, there's a very, very good chance that a non-manufacturer team could win Le Mans.
Which would be great.
I would love seeing that. Absolutely love seeing that. that to me is what I'm most looking forward to in all of motorsports this year, is watching a non-manufacturer team win Le Mans. That would make the race for me.
I just don't understand why people are so excited about manufacturers. Tell me, use Formula One because it's a simple example. Does it look any better watching a Mercedes go around the track as it does a Williams? Or Minardi, as they used to be back in day as well. You can't tell. To spend 300 million to bring that car to the circuit and the drivers, or to spend 20 million and a Force India come along, you cannot tell. In fact, it looks better than privateer cars because they're less sorted, so there's more movement.
And honestly, I think that's one of the reasons that Ford has become kind of a darling with that GT, because they kind of got a bug up their ass and said, hey, we want to go back to Le Mans and win on our 50th anniversary.
How
no
very
pressure.
Cool.
No pressure. Oh, by the way, we're only going to have the car done the year of. So the first year of the car, we're going to go try and win Le Mans. And they did it. These guys come out of the fucking gate with a brand new car and win. That's unheard of. The last time that was done, actually, I don't know if it's ever been done, because they didn't even do it with the original Ford GT. It wasn't until their third time coming to Le Mans with the GT40 that they finally got that historic, win over Ferrari. They didn't do it the first time out originally. This time, they did it the first try. And I think it's made them a bit of a darling, but the other thing is, they flat out perform, man. I mean, they won that race at Le Mans. Everybody's, okay, great job. Holy shit. They come out and did exactly what they set out to do. And that was in 2016. And then they do this at Daytona where they take a commanding 1-2 finish. And everybody's looking at them like, holy shit, these guys are not fucking around. This wasn't a fluke. I mean, they came to win, and they're doing exactly that. And it kind of put everybody back on their heels. And by everybody, I mean, Porsche and Corvette and BMW kind of put them back and said, oh, holy shit, we got another contender here. And now BMW's brought out this new car, the M8, and I really hope it does well, because at the rate that it's going, the GTE field is already fairly small, only having a few cars of each make. I want to see BMW do well simply so they don't pull out. I don't want to see BMW say, oh, well, okay, we can't compete with Ford, we're done. I don't want to see that happen, because that's going to make my favorite class, the GTE class, get even smaller. And that's never a good thing. Even though I'm a fan of Ford.
There's the cancer.
And therein lies the ultimate problem with manufacturer support. Someone's got to win, someone's got to lose. A team like Williams can afford to run mid or back of the pipe because they're a racing team and a racing team only. That's what they do. And that's exactly what it should be. It should be fair enough. If the manufacturer wants to do a customer program and build a bunch of cars and sell them, okay, that's nothing wrong with that. Like Hyundai have done it, World Touring Car. They've built it, they've run it, they've got a customer team to test it, and now they're selling it to interested parties. That's fine if you want new products to come onto the market, but a manufacturer will always leave at some stage when it doesn't align with their business needs. Yep. And that is not a sustainable way to run a sport.
Yeah, if it doesn't help them sell units, then they're not interested.
And there's nothing that's going to spoil selling units by being thrashed week in, week out.
I go back to the days of Cosworth. Cosworth was involved in so much motorsport, period. And that's what I would like to see happen again. Is I would like to see niche manufacturing that supports theories. So like we can all go, it doesn't matter what what formula we're talking about, what form of racing, but you can go here, we've got this great selection of engines, and the manufacturers would jump on that because they can make money with it. And guess what? If a Ferrari engine is in a Penske car, everybody's going to know that it's a Ferrari engine.
Yeah, exactly.
So they're going to get marketing mileage out of it.
To bring it, I guess, somewhat home, let's look at Shelby. I mean, that's exactly what Shelby did. He was
Yeah.
a very small racing team and got that little fucking Scout or whatever the hell it is. I believe the original is an AC Scout. And then just went and grabbed a Ford engine and tossed it in there.
Crammed it in there.
And turned the Shelby name into one of the largest names in automotive history. I mean, Ford still produces Shelby cars. It's the same thing with Roush. To bring it even closer to home or our times, you look at Roush Racing, which is the largest team in NASCAR. Roush did the exact same thing. He started out by tuning cars and being a very niche, small, independent setup. Still technically an independent setup. I mean, Roush is technically an independent team. It's not a manufacturer team, even though he's partnered with Ford. But now it's one of the biggest names in racing is Roush. And I mean, he literally started 10 minutes down the road from my grandparents' house in North Carolina. Their building is still there in Mooresville, North Carolina. I mean, I remember being 6, 7 years old, sitting out on my grandfather's front porch, listening to them testing cars out on the Roush test track.
Nice.
That's awesome.
So those little guys that get started like that, hopefully with, like I said, with LMP, with those guys backing out, maybe we're going to see more of that there. But especially with the domination of manufacturers in auto racing and the media side of things and how much everything's been inflated to get involved in it, it's damn near impossible for those small guys now to really break in and make a name for themselves.
Well, to be honest, I think the big manufacturers leaving LMP is the best thing that's happened to prototype racing. I agree. We've got Rebellion, Ginetta, a couple of other teams.
Yeah, Ginetta announced their LMP car.
Yeah, so I think it's going to be a golden time for prototype racing. And on the flip side of the coin, I think all the manufacturer influx into Formula E is what will kill that championship as well. And yeah, I could have cried when Audi and Porsche pulled out of because I thought prototypes and LMP1 endurance racing was starting to really pick up speed, slowly, but picking up speed. I thought, oh God, when they go, Toyota's going to pull out, obviously, or it's going to be a one-car championship. I thought that was the end, and they would lose LMP1 and prototype racing.
I did too.
I actually think it's the growth of it. It's going to save it.
Well, after
people can buy an engine off the shelf, come race. I mean, what happened to John Judd of the world and the
after seeing Ginetta announce their LMP car, that's when I was like, oh, beautiful. Holy shit, here we go. We can see some of these smaller guys start getting involved. And
like little teams like
Rebellion. And like you said, that Ginetta car is beautiful. God, I love that thing. I like their cars anyways. The Ginetta GT4 car, I think, is one of the best looking GT4 cars out there next to the Aston, because
but to me, that's
simple
the future
fact is,
of racing.
Aston makes the most beautiful race car in the world.
Hell yes.
I've said it.
But that's the future of racing. Is privateer teams filling out touring cars. They just announced the 26-car capacity grid, not a works manufacturer in sight.
Now,
and that's exactly how it needs to be.
I will say there was one manufacturer pull out in racing that did upset me, and that was Mercedes saying this was going to be the last year for them in DTM. That kind of hit me, because anybody that follows DTM, I mean, Mercedes is DTM. I mean, it's originally a German, it's a German manufacturer, but it's a German class, I guess, if you will, of racing that got popular there. And for Mercedes to say that they're pulling out of DTM, that was pretty shitty. To hear that.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, that were a real shame, because DTM's got a lot of potential.
Yeah, but I mean, maybe we'll see some more private groups get involved with that.
Again, if they do the joint technical regulations with Super GT that they're talking about, that could entice people like Opel back in again. The Calibra was one sweet car. So
Yeah.
get that back in again, and it continues to be a blow for DTM. But again, I'm starting to wonder if they're getting too expensive and too technologically advanced for their own good. That's
maybe
to the detriment. I mean, it's always been technologically driven, but maybe that's to the detriment a little bit. The little winglets all over the front of the car. A touring car should be able to rub.
Well,
And now
the only
your
reason
wing goes, your downforce has gone, it's over.
the only reason I say it's not is simply because DTM doesn't allow any driver aids whatsoever. There's no traction control,
Yeah,
no
that's
ABS, no computer controlled anything. It relies purely on the driver's skill and downforce, and that's one of the things I like about DTM is DTMs are basically GT3 cars on steroids. They are the absolute maximum of what you can get out of a true passenger car, if you will. I mean, they don't really resemble a passenger car because of all the ground effects and flared fenders and everything that they have on them, but they do genuinely yeah, they do start out as a Mercedes or an Audi or something like that. But Bobby unfortunately did have to step away. So the last question, or the thing I want to wrap up with here tonight, is when it comes to sim racing, and you're much more in the know than I am, since you get to kind of get a peek behind the curtain a lot of the times, given your job at race department. Without giving anything away that you shouldn't be, what is the big thing in sim racing that you're looking forward to this year? What's that one thing that you're just sitting back thinking, man, I cannot wait until that gets released or this starts?
I'm going to do it again, and I'm going to throw two out there. Dakar, the new game that sort of got teased very recently. I'm talking to the I'm talking to the devs at the moment, so I'm hoping to get some insider info and an interview and a few bits and bobs going soon. If, and this is a massive if, and this is a critical if, that'll make me decide which way I go with it, if it is a true simulation of both physics, endurance, and all the stuff that comes with Dakar, that could be, for me personally, legendary. I've heard things like there's going to be 2-hour stages. You can get stuck in the sand. You can get out of the car and repair it and dig it out and help your fellow competitor. Oh yeah. So if all this is true and it's got VR support as well, wow, that could be amazing. There's always the danger that they'll go down the arcade route and appeal to the masses, and it'd just be a case of planting the throttle on the controller, bouncing up some pretty graphics and getting to end at stage, then I'm not interested. But yeah, if that's a true sim, then Dakar is exciting for me. And also GTR3 from Simbin Studios.
Yes.
Which I know a lot more about than I'm allowed to talk about. But it frustrates the hell out of me because I can't respond to all these naysayers. But that, trust me, people, is going to be fucking awesome.
Yeah, and that's one that I'm definitely taking your word on. GTR2 was an amazing game, and me and Paul have discussed this a little bit before, and for Paul to say it lives up to it, that says a lot. I mean, that's one hell
like a modern version.
Yeah, that's one hell of a recommendation for someone to say it lives up to GTR2. That I'm definitely looking forward to that for sure.
Just to qualify that, it's looking like it's going to live up to GTR2.
Yeah,
until
exactly.
I get behind the wheel and have a few outstanding questions answered. I can't say that for sure, but the noises that are being made and the things that I've seen and heard, good times roll on.
Yeah. And I know for myself, and I mentioned this on the last podcast that Bobby was on, the thing I'm definitely looking forward to the most is going to be the RDLMS, which is the Le Mans Series League that Race Department runs. Myself and Bobby are actually going to start a team, and we're going to race in the RDLMS together this year.
Oh, nice.
So that should be a really fun time because me and Bobby drive together all the time. Like I said, hours per week we're driving together. We got the bright idea that, hey, we should, do an actual league setup together. And since both of us enjoy endurance racing, we both immediately said, well, we have to do the RDLMS. And we actually joked that we're gonna call it like the old men racing or something along that line, grumpy old men. But we said we have to get a couple of young guys to be on our team with us, because the two of us can only do about 1 hour long stints. So we'll get in the car for an hour, drive around the track a little bit, and then we'll hand it over to the young guys and let them actually go perform in the race for us while we kick back and massage our old beat up knees.
Are you picking the young guys so they can sing at night?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. Because we're blind as a bat. My knees will only last about an hour, maybe an hour and a half at maximum, and then I'm like, yeah, I got to take a break for 3 hours.
Yeah, I know how that feels. I must say, actually, you reminded me saying RDLMS. The other thing I'm looking forward to, and this is a blatant plug, but I am genuinely excited, some of the stuff that we've got cooking at Race Department for the coming year, there's so much potential and opportunity. It's almost stressful trying to work out which one to pick off.
Yeah.
We've got some very, very interesting things that I can't talk about in the works that will be, for fear of over-egging the pudding, genre-defining, hopefully. Some really cool content and some interesting stuff we're doing with video that'll be coming up. We're talking to a few very, 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 very cool partners about doing some awesome stuff together. So, yeah. Race Department in 2018 is a big, massive, huge year for us to really step it up and do something quite spectacular for the community. So, fingers crossed, that'll be pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to this year's Sim Racing Expo as well, which again, we might have something cool to talk about regarding that in the not-too-distant future as well.
Yeah, and for those of you guys that that follow me, obviously know I've gotten pretty involved at Race Department at this point, and whether you enjoy necessarily watching the racing and stuff, that's kind of beside the point. If you enjoy motorsports and things involved in motorsports, but especially if you enjoy sim racing, head over to racedepartment.com, check it out. Get involved if you want to. If you don't want to, if you just want to lurk, that's fine. Check out some of the fucking great stories that Paul writes up, and be on the lookout for more content, especially if you like the smooth sounds of Mr. Paul Jeffrey. Be on the lookout for some more content from this man, because there is a lot of things on the horizon that I know I'm pretty excited to see and kind of be in the background with. So hopefully you guys will take a look at some of that. But that being said, that's gonna kind of wrap it up for us tonight. Again, this was a long one, which I expected and I'm happy with. Paul, any last minute words for your millions of fans out there?
Yeah, thanks Jeremy for having me tonight. I've really enjoyed it. It's been something a bit different. Thank you guys and gals for listening, and obviously all your comments and everything. It's been nice to engage to a little degree with a few people and have a chit chat. And thank you also for kind words regarding race department stuff. Very much a passion I enjoy, and be awesome to see some of you guys on there. And if anybody wants any advice, not that my advice is worth anything, or guidance, not that that's worth anything either, drop me a PM at RD or drop a post in the relevant subforum and tag me in, and happy to help anybody who's sim racing curious but doesn't know where to start. Then do let me know, and let's spread some of this sim racing love.
Excellent. Well, that's going to do it for us tonight. Paul, I can't thank you enough for coming on tonight. I had an absolute blast.
Me too.
Look forward to doing this again in the future, and hopefully all of you watching and listening enjoyed it as well. And we will be doing the squirrel mission with Wee Woo here in about 2 hours now or so. So hopefully you guys will be able to come back and join me for that. Don't forget, if you want to get involved in the podcast, or maybe you didn't catch the first little bit of the podcast and you want to, head over to the Patreon page and get set up there so you can get access to the podcast once we go off air. Because again, once we go off air, This is pulled off of Twitch and off of YouTube and only given to the Patreon supporters over there until next week. So if you did miss part of it and you don't want to wait a week to be able to hear it, then head over to Patreon and get set up there so you can get early access or some of the other rewards that are associated with that, including, you know, sending in topics you want to hear us talk about, or even potentially being a guest on the podcast. So make sure you check that out. Again, hopefully you guys enjoyed, and we'll see you in a few hours. Have a good night.